Well, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Kent Hovind. I taught high school science for 15 years. And now, since 1989, I've been traveling around doing seminars on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. Tonight we're going to cover, our videotape number 3 is all about dinosaurs. Where do they fit into the Bible? This fellow from National Geographic says, no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. Well, now hold on a minute. Does he know that, or does he think that? In order to know that, wouldn't he have to know everybody that ever lived? Did he talk to you before he said that? No, he didn't talk to me. I bet he didn't talk to the folks that lived 500 years ago either, did he? You can't just make that and call it a scientific statement. No human being has ever seen a dinosaur. That's his opinion, but that's certainly not a scientific statement. See, the Bible says in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And it says in Exodus chapter 20, in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is. Which means Adam must have seen dinosaurs. If he made everything in 6 days, I believe that means he made everything in 6 days, just like he said he did. And in seminar part 2, we talked about the firmament that was above the atmosphere. In Genesis 1:6, it says, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. When God first made the earth, there was a canopy of water above the firmament, above the atmosphere. That could have been a canopy of ice, 8 or 10 or 20 inches thick, I don't know. I don't think all the rain for the flood came from the canopy. I mean, most of the water for the flood came from inside the earth. The fountains of the deep broke open. That's where most of the flood water came from. It only rained 40 days, but the water kept coming up for 150 days. So it didn't all come from, from the rain. But this canopy of water overhead is probably what explains why they lived so long before the flood, over 900 years, and why we don't live to be 900 years old today. That canopy is one of several factors that probably influenced their great longevity. So from the creation up until the flood, things were very different. The people lived to be more than 900 years old. You could learn a lot in 900 years. Adam spoke every language in the world. Well, there was only one, but he spoke it. Okay? Now, during this time, something very strange would happen to the reptiles, because reptiles never stop growing. People stop growing. When you're 16 or 18 years old, you're going to quit growing, at least vertically. Some go horizontally afterwards, but that's okay. Reptiles never stop growing. So before the flood came, when the reptiles lived to be 900 years old, they would get to be really big. Dinosaurs were just big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve before the flood came. They did not live millions of years ago. And then Noah took them on the ark. People say, dinosaurs on the ark, they're kind of big, aren't they? Well, the big ones were big, but the little ones were little. And Noah was 600 years old when he built that boat. I bet he was smart enough to figure out, you don't have to bring the biggest ones you can find. Bring 2 babies. Just be sure to get a pink one and a blue one. That'll be important later. There are all sorts of reasons for bringing babies. They're smaller, obviously. Did you know the biggest dinosaur egg ever found is smaller than a football? So you can get an awfully big dinosaur from a pretty small egg, okay? Secondly, they weigh less, they eat less, they sleep a lot more, they're tougher. Did you know kids fall down and bounce and get up and keep running? Adults fall down and break or lay there for a while. So it makes common sense to bring babies, since they would be more durable for a journey on the ark in case it gets rough once in a while. Now, some of the scoffers have said, man, if it was stormy seas for a whole year, it'd kill everybody on the ark. The Bible doesn't say it was stormy seas for a whole year. Noah was in the ark for a year. He hit bottom in the 7th month. He didn't get out for 6 more months. We cover that on video number 6, why he didn't get out. But there can be storms going on in the world right now. And it doesn't affect us right here, does it? Could be a storm over in India. We don't feel the weather pattern changes. So I think Noah was in the ark, and God watched over that whole situation. But after the flood, the dinosaurs, the babies, would live longer to produce more offspring, and that's why he brought them. Why on earth would you bring big elephants or big giraffes? Just bring 2 babies. And he only had to bring 2 of every sort, not 2 of every species. So that's where people get all confused about this. God told Noah to bring them after their kind, after their kind, after their kind, 2 of every sort. 7 of some, of course. Just 2 generic animals of each kind, and only those in whose nostrils was the breath of life, and only those on dry land. Noah didn't have to bring any fish. They had plenty of water outside. And he didn't have to bring any bugs, by the way, because bugs don't have nostrils. They breathe through their skin, through spiracles. He brought just two of the generic dog kind, like our dog Nicky. Nicky was a Canardly, because you can already tell what kind he was. Okay? That's the generic dog there, Nicky. Probably the horse and the zebra had a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue about that, but it looked like a horse. So there's been a lot of variations within the kind since the flood, but that's not evolution. It's just a variation of the same kind of animal. Skeptics will say, how did he fit those millions of animals onto the ark? Well, in the first place, he only brought land animals. Okay, that greatly limits the number. He could eliminate the bugs. That really, really limits the number. Only bring babies. That's common sense. Bring two of each kind, not every single variety. Did you know there's only about 8,000 basic kinds of animals in the world? Adam could name 8,000 kinds of animals in a couple hours. People say, how did one man name all those animals in one day? Well, they start with the assumption that they have to have millions of names. That's a false assumption. They start with the assumption that Adam is as dumb as the average person today. Adam came pre-programmed straight from the hand of God. I mean, he could walk, talk, and get married first day. Right? Okay. He was pre-programmed, fully loaded computer. Okay. And how big was the ark anyway? You know, it beats what the evolutionists believe. They believe 20 billion years ago there was a big bang where nothing exploded and produced everything. And then 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down and it rained on the rocks for millions of years. Yes, boys and girls, it took a long time for the earth to cool down. But the earth was hot and there were large pools of bubbling lava. This is what the textbooks teach the kids today in school, right? Some of you face this stuff today, right? And oceans formed as it rained on the rocks for millions of years. Yes, boys and girls, millions of years of torrential rains created the oceans. And swirling in the waters of the oceans is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Progress from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. Boy, I guess it is. It's totally stopped. That's how slow it is. This textbook says the first self-replicating systems must have emerged in this organic soup. Was your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa soup? I don't think so, no. So according to the Big Bang Theory, 20 billion years ago, nothing exploded and produced everything. And 4.6 billion years ago, the earth cooled down. It rained on the rocks for millions of years, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive 3 billion years ago. One skeptic said to me one time, he said, Hovind, did you realize there are hundreds of kinds of dogs in the world? I said, yes, sir, you're right about that. He said, do you think all those dogs came from just 2 dogs on Noah's Ark? I said, sir, would you look at what you believe? You believe all the dogs in the world came from a rock. That would take an awful lot of faith, I would say. Here's the evolutionist life verse, saying to a stock, thou art my father, and to a stone thou hast brought me forth. I found my daddy's life verse in the Bible. Matthew 17:15. Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic and sore vexed. But anyway, the Bible says the earth was corrupt before God and filled with violence. Everything was corrupt. People were wicked. And the Lord said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark. And Noah said to the boys, hey boys, go for wood. We got to build a boat, quick. And so they went and got the wood, and he built this monster boat. After the flood was over, Noah's son Shem had a son and named him Arphaxad. Why would anybody name a kid Arphaxad? Can't you see that kid in kindergarten? What's your name, son? Arphaxad. Do you know how to spell it? No. Nobody does. But don't you think little Arphaxad was getting big enough one day? He's sitting on Grandpa Noah's lap, and he's looking around like kids do, and he says, hey, Grandpa, I have a question. How come we're the only people in the whole world? Where is everybody? Eventually that thought's going to cross his mind, don't you think? I mean, after all, there weren't many people in those days. They had the whole world to themselves. And Grandpa Noah's going to tell the story to grandson Arphaxad about the flood. Actually, Noah's son Shem lived a long time after the flood. He lived long enough to tell the story firsthand to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God made sure there was one of his witnesses there. I was there kind of fella. You don't believe in the flood? Hey, let's go talk to Shem. He's still alive. And today, there are 270 surviving flood legends. The Hawaiian have a legend that says, long after the death of Kunihana, the first man, the world became a wicked, terrible place to live. There was one good man left. His name was Nu'u. He made a great canoe with a house on it and filled it with animals. The waters came up over all the earth and killed all the people. Only Nu'u and his family were saved. Interesting story. The Chinese have a legend called the Hiking Classic, probably one of the oldest stories in the world. The Hiking Classic says Fu Hai is the father of the Chinese civilization. The story says Fu Hai, his wife, 3 sons and 3 daughters, escaped a great flood. He and his family were the only people alive on earth. After the flood, they repopulated the world. Interesting. Sounds kind of like the Bible story, doesn't it? The Toltec Indians in Mexico have a legend that says the first world lasted 1,716 years and was destroyed by a great flood. Only one family named Cox survived. Why would there be 270 flood legends? Well, I think it's because there was a flood. That's my theory. I mean, a worldwide flood, too. You have guys like Hugh Ross who go around saying, you know, it's just a local flood in the days of Noah. I said, Hugh, if it's just a local flood, why would God tell Noah to build that big boat, fill it full of animals, and stay on there for a year? Tell Noah to move. I can figure that out. Don't give me this local flood baloney. The Bible says the time before the flood was 1,656 years. The Toltec Indian legend says 1716. Pretty close for a legend 4,000 years old. And if you look at the country of Turkey today, you'll find on the far right-hand side a mountain called Mount Ararat. On a Turkish map, it's called No Ungumshi, which means Noah's big boat in Turkish. There's a sign, No Ungumshi, 5 kilometers this way. Everybody knows where it is. They just walk right up to it. See, the Bible says the ark rested in the 7th month upon the mountains of Ararat. It does not say it landed on Mount Ararat. It might have, I don't know. But the Bible says it landed in the mountains of Ararat. There are at least 4 theories about Noah's ark of what happened to it. Okay? One theory says they took it apart and used the lumber to build cities. And it doesn't even exist anymore. One theory says it rotted. It's gone. Okay? I mean, a wooden boat, 4,000 years old, it's a little, I'd be skeptical of anything survived. The third theory says it's still on Mount Ararat, covered up in ice, and you only get to see it once in a while. And there have been a lot of expeditions that have gone up there, and they all come back and say, boy, we just almost found it. Send more money, we'll go look for it next year. And the fourth theory says it's down in the valley. I don't know which theory is true, but I've studied all as much as I can, and I think there's good evidence for all 4. But those who think it's on the mountain say it's up in the valley, some valley that was formed by an earthquake, and the side of the mountain slid away. Could be, I don't know. Other people think this is Noah's Ark down in the valley. It's a boat-shaped object. It is the same size as Noah's Ark would have been. It's 17 miles away from Mount Ararat. I knew Ron Wyatt real well. He was a good friend of mine. He died a couple years ago, but his website is WyattMuseum.com, and he and many other folks think that is Noah's Ark. His ministry was taken over by Richard Reeves, who's also a friend of mine, and they both think that's Noah's Ark down in the valley. They say it collapsed, folded in after it got old, and splayed out to the side. Ships kind of fold out to the side as they wear out. So it's much wider than it used to be. They found iron rivets all over that region. I've held them in my hand. They're in the museum up in just south of Nashville, Tennessee. If you come down that interstate, you can stop at the museum and see the iron rivets for yourself. The government of Turkey said this is Noah's Ark. They even built a visitor center. Now, Creation Magazine, good friends of mine, they have published some very negative articles saying it's not Noah's Ark. I've read both sides of the story, and I think it's still very much a possibility that that is indeed Noah's Ark, and I think they overlooked a couple things. But the Bible says the ark was 300 cubits long. A cubit is from your elbow to your fingertip. I'm 6'1", and my cubit is 21 inches. The standard Hebrew cubit is 18 inches. The Egyptian cubit was 20.6 inches, just a little bit shorter than mine. Now, since Moses went to school in Egypt, we could assume that he would use the Egyptian cubit in his writings. He didn't actually write Genesis, but he edited it. Put the 10 sections together. We covered that on video number 7, the 10 different authors of Genesis. The boat-shaped object down in the valley is 515 feet long, which is exactly 300 Egyptian cubits. One of the people said, well, anytime mud flows around an object, it makes that shape. That's just a mud flow. Yes, but when mud flows around an object, the round side is on the uphill side and the pointed side is on the downhill side, and this one is backwards. This is not a mud flow. Anyway, it's about 2/3 the size of the Titanic. In that region, they have so far found, I believe, 12 giant stones. These stones weigh 9,000 pounds, and they have holes drilled through the top. Apparently, this was to hold a rope to hang this rock over the side of the boat. It's what's called a drogue stone. The purpose of a drogue stone is to keep the boat stabilized in stormy weather. Sort of like a shock absorber to the water. As the waves hit you, the boat slowly moves instead of, violently reacting to the waves. It keeps you more stable with a bunch of rocks hanging all over the boat. Plus, if it really gets windy, the wind will turn the boat and you'll be perpendicular to the waves because the rocks are going to drag behind you, and now you can't capsize. One atheist wrote me a letter and said, "Hovind, you're so stupid. Don't you know if he had rocks hanging all over the boat, it would slow him down?" Well, he wasn't trying to go anywhere, He's just trying to float. Of course it would slow him down, man. One atheist I debated, he's a former preacher turned atheist. He said, you can't have a boat that big because if you get over 300 feet long, when the waves come up, the boat bends in the middle and it breaks. Well, first place, a lot of people have built boats over 300 feet long. The Chinese had a bunch of them way over 300 feet long that sailed just fine. Secondly, Noah's Ark didn't have any masts with sails attached to them. It wasn't designed to sail. And the illustrations he uses are all masted ships. They had a six-master that was 300 and some feet long, and the wind would make it flex and twist, and the hull leaked continuously. Well, Noah's Ark didn't have any masts. Plus, if Noah's Ark had a moon pool, that would solve all the problems, too. There are several ways to solve this problem. A moon pool is a hole in the floor with walls built up inside, and when you go over the waves, the water comes up and down inside that hole. And it acts like a giant piston, which pumps fresh air in and out of the boat every time you hit a wave. Remember what he had on board? You might actually pray for a good wave once in a while. Hey, Lord, we're about to feed the elephants. Will you send a little wave here, please? We need some help. So, what happened to the dinosaurs? I mean, if the Bible is true and dinosaurs were on the ark, what happened to them? That question of what happened to the dinosaurs is used in public schools all over the world to trigger kids to start a conversation about evolution, to teach them the evolution theory. And they'll tell the kids, maybe a meteor struck the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago, made an iridium layer all over the world, and killed all the dinosaurs. I don't think so. This scientist from Indiana's got a neat theory. He says the dinosaurs killed themselves off with their own flatulence. The methane they produced caused the Earth's atmospheric temperature to warm up, creating a kind of greenhouse effect. This might have increased global warming to a point where the dinosaurs could not stand the heat. I just don't know what to say about a theory like that. Anyway, so what made the dinosaurs go extinct anyway? Hey, they are asking the wrong question. The question is not what made them go extinct. The question is, did they go extinct? See, the liberals are great at getting us to argue about the totally wrong subject. They ask me all the time, they say, do you think we should teach creation in public schools? Should we teach the Bible in public schools? I'll say, well, those are good questions, and I'll be glad to talk about them. But there's another question we ought to be asking first. Should we have public schools? Now, there's a question to ask, isn't there? I mean, you ought to read your 10th Amendment to the Constitution, folks. According to the 10th Amendment, the federal government has no business being involved in education at all. First thing I'd do if I was president is shut down the Department of Education. Turn it back over to the states or the local people. They know what they want their kids taught. Okay? The federal government has no business being involved in education. That's my hobby horse for the moment. If you want to find out why the schools went public, be sure to get on the website exodusmandate.org, and they will give you lots of information about why the schools went public back in the early 1800s as part of a bigger long-range plan toward a new world order coming soon to a city near you. But anyway, after the dinosaurs got off the ark, they faced a very hostile climate. Things had changed. Remember, before the flood, the people lived to be 900. After the flood, it dropped off right away to 400, and then 200, and then 100. Probably, at least one of the factors was, the canopy that used to protect them was gone. It had rained for 40 days. And now with more radiation coming in, you get more mutations. You have more problems, which they probably would not have had before. Plus, your food is not getting the same nourishment that it used to have before the flood, so your food supply is being diminished in its quality. Probably several reasons, but I think dinosaurs had two basic problems after the flood. Number one, they faced major climate changes where they couldn't live as long, and so some of the big species simply went extinct. They couldn't survive. Second problem they had was probably worse. People were hunting them. In those days, they called them dragons. They would kill them for meat. There'd be a lot of hamburger in one brachiosaurus. You could feed the village for a while, couldn't you? They killed them because they were a menace or for medicine. You know, it's amazing how many ancient recipes for medicines call for dragon saliva or dragon bones to be ground up and put in these things. Just like it's, just go out and get a dragon and put some of the bones. Just like it's normal. Everybody does that, don't you know? They used to call them dragons because the word dinosaur wasn't even invented till 1841. So all through history, they're known as dragons. The word dragon is found in the Bible 35 times. They didn't call them dinosaur. The word didn't exist until 1841. But as the population of people began to grow after the flood, the population of dragons began to go down. Nobody wants to live next door to a dragon. Hey, the same thing happened right here in Pensacola, Florida. How many grizzly bears are roaming around Escambia County right now? 0. How many were there 500 years ago, you think? Probably a lot of them, right? Well, what happened? You see, when people move into an area and civilize it, the big ferocious animals are driven off or killed off, right? If it came on the evening news tonight that there were 5 grizzly bears roaming around Escambia County, do you know what would happen by 6 o'clock in the morning? Every redneck in 3 counties would be out there with a rifle trying to shoot one. And whoever could shoot the biggest one would be the hero. They'd put his picture in the paper, I shot the grizzly bear and saved the village. That's exactly what would happen. And that's what happened to the dragons. Man, if you could kill a dragon, you'd be a hero. And there are all sorts of stories of people killing these dragons. Gilgamesh is famous for slaying a dragon. Some Chinese guy named Yu surveyed the land of China. And according to the story, he built channels to drain the water off to the sea to make the land livable again. And many snakes and dragons were driven from the marshlands. Just, you got to drive the dragons off before you can, farm the lands, like it's part of the procedure. The Babylonian god Marduk is shown pictured here on top of a fire-breathing dragon. He's saying, now, Brother Hovind, you don't believe in fire-breathing dragons, do you? Well, yeah, I do. The Bible talks about a fiery flying serpent in Isaiah 14. There's an entire chapter in Job 41 about the fire-breathing dragon called Leviathan. Look what it says here. Out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils go a smoke. I've seen deacons do that. As out of a seething pot or cauldron, his breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. There really was a fire-breathing dragon. We've got a whole videotape about that, an hour and a half long, on Leviathan, the fire-breathing dragon, in our topical series of tapes. But if you get a Catholic Bible, you'll find the book of Daniel has 2 extra chapters. This is part of what's called the apocryphal books, okay? It's not scripture, but it's interesting reading. In Daniel chapter 14, it says, there was a great dragon in the place, and the Babylonians worshipped him. And the king said to Daniel, behold, thou canst not say now that this is not a living God. Adore him, therefore. And Daniel said, I adore the Lord my God, for he is the living God. But that is no living God. But give me leave, O king. That means give me permission. And I will kill this dragon without sword or club. And the king said, I give thee leave. Then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair and boiled them together and made lumps and put them into the dragon's mouth, and the dragon burst asunder. What a strange story. Let me give you the Hovind translation of what's going on here. Okay? The Bible tells us Daniel was a man who understood science. Daniel knew full well that pitch is made from tree sap, and fat is salty tasting, and just about all animals like salty tasting things. That's why he put out salt blocks for the cows or the deer, right? And hair won't digest very well. So Daniel put them all together, made lumps, tossed them in. The dragon liked the taste because of the fat. He swallowed them, but because of the stickiness and the hair, they wouldn't digest. And they plugged up his intestinal tract. And these were the days before Roto-Rooter, and so he burst asunder. You figure it out. I know Saddam Hussein, by the way, do you ever notice George Bush always called him Saddam Hussein? There's a reason for that. Okay? Saddam is the Arabic word that means prince. Saddam, spelled the same way, pronounced differently, means horse's rear end. So George Bush called him Saddam Hussein. Anyway, Saddam thinks he is Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. The guy has a serious ego problem, okay? He's got his picture in front of Nebuchadnezzar on their currency. Saddam has spent a fortune rebuilding ancient Babylon. Did you know Babylon was destroyed in 600 BC? Saddam has rebuilt it in the last 20 years. They're using the city today. When they found the original brick walls of the old city of Babylon from 2,600 years ago, they were very well preserved in the dry sand. They just excavated the walls and found carvings of dragons on them. How did they know about dragons in 600 BC? Well, there were probably some still alive. And apparently, Nebuchadnezzar had one in a cage. He had whatever else he wanted, you know. He was an absolute dictator. But the ancient city of Babylon shows dragons all over these brick walls. Very interesting. Alexander the Great reported in 300 BC that his soldiers were scared by dragons when they conquered part of India. This Roman mosaic shows two long-necked dragons fighting. Or kissing. You can't tell what's happening for sure. Boy, that would be necking, wouldn't it? Wow. Anyway, how did the Romans know about dragons in the 2nd century after Christ? St. George is famous for slaying a dragon in 275 A.D. Beowulf is famous for killing dragons. He was finally killed by a dragon when he was 88 years old. If you ever get the Beowulf story in Old English, good luck trying to read it. That's English, folks, from 1,500 years ago. Ma'am, you're from England. Can you read any of that? No? Okay. I know they still talk funny over in your country, but that's why they lost the war, by the way. But the Beowulf story, when they translate it to modern English, says, Beowulf killed Grendel the dragon by pulling off one of its arms, and the creature bled to death. What a strange story. Pulled off his arm. Well, most folks that study the T-Rex will tell you his front arms were pretty weak and puny. And I don't know if this was the dragon they're talking about or not, but probably if you could ever get a way to get a hold of it, you could probably jerk one of his arms off. Getting to it would be the tough part, you know. But they did find the Babylonian cylinder seal showing a man pulling the arm off a dragon. Interesting. There are dragon legends from countries all over the world, especially in the water. Of course, they'd be the hardest ones to exterminate, of course. Ancient pottery, one of the oldest pieces of pottery in the world, for example, like this one from the 1st dynasty in Egypt, shows two long-necked dragons on this pottery. Well, this fellow says no human being's ever seen a dinosaur. Well, then why did they put them on their pottery? He doesn't know that nobody's ever seen one. He thinks nobody's ever seen one because he has never seen one. And because he was taught going through school that nobody's ever seen one, and he was crippled by his education, like a lot of kids are these days. Here's an ancient hippo tusk showing an animal with a long neck and a long tail. This is found in a tomb from the 12th century BC. Just about every country that has ancient roots has stories of dragons. There's a Thai seafood restaurant showing a dragon head on the animal. There's a Russian medallion showing a man slaying a dragon. There's a Bulgarian postage stamp with somebody killing a dragon. An Irish writer in 900 A.D. reported that someone killed a dragon with iron nails on its tail. There are many websites that deal with dragons. Most of them are from the, occult philosophy. But it's interesting, all the legends of dragons that have been found throughout the world. The Norwegians, my ancestors, used to put dragon heads on their ships. Why would they do that? Why are there so many legends about the Kraken, the great dragon of the sea, that the Norse Vikings talked about so much? Siegfried is famous for slaying the dragon Fafnir, famous Norwegian hero from 1,000 years ago. Marco Polo lived in China for 17 years. When he came back, he reported the emperor is raising dragons to pull chariots in his parades. Why would he say that? Well, I have a theory about that. I think he said that because the emperor was raising dragons to pull chariots in his parades. That's my theory. If you look at the old Chinese law books from 1611, that's when they appointed the post of royal dragon feeder. Why do you need a royal dragon feeder? To feed the dragon. Probably getting pretty rare by then, but I think there were few alive 400 years ago. A city in France was renamed to honor the man who slew the dragon. Nerluc, France. The Indians carved pictures of dinosaurs on the walls of the Grand Canyon. Dr. Delancey, he's dead now, but his widow still travels and speaks on creation up in Percy, Pennsylvania, took these photographs of the dinosaurs on the walls of the Grand Canyon. Interesting. They say nobody's ever seen one, huh? I don't think so. This article came out in 1924. I want you to look at this carefully. The fact that some prehistoric man made a pictograph of a dinosaur on the walls of this canyon upsets completely all of our theories regarding the antiquity of man. Oh, we upset their theory. Facts are stubborn and immutable things. If theories do not square with the facts, then the theories must change. The facts remain. About a year ago, a photograph of a dinosaur was shown to a scientist of national repute who was then specializing in dinosaurs. He said it is not a dinosaur, it is impossible, because we know that dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man appeared on Earth. First, I'd like you to notice he said 12 million years, didn't he? Today's students are taught it is 65 million years before dinosaurs went extinct, right? You know, back in 1905, the textbooks say the Earth is 2 billion years old. In 1969, when they went to the moon, the textbooks told the kids the Earth is 3.5 billion years old. Today they're taught the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. In 1770, they taught the kids the Earth was 70,000 years old. Wow, the Earth is getting older at the rate of about 40 years per minute. Aging rapidly, folks. If you go to Blanding, Utah, you'll find carvings of dinosaurs on the canyon there in Blanding, Utah, right now, still there. Here's an Australian cave painting where somebody painted a picture of a dinosaur and a native running away from it on a cave in Australia. I can't pronounce the name of this lake in Canada, but there's a picture of what looks like a dinosaur to me, painted by the Indians on this cliff, on this island in Canada. He says no one's ever seen one. I don't think he knows that. He just thinks that. If you go to Ica, Peru, they've got the driest desert in the world down there. It's only rained once or twice in 400 years. Not a good place for a garden. When the Spanish came across that area in 1570s, they found white lines going across this desert. They said, obviously man-made lines. Why would somebody make this white line? It goes for miles across the desert. Nobody knew what these white lines were until they got airplanes. And they realized these are actually giant pictures. How many have ever heard of those before? They're called the Nazca lines down in Peru. Amazing. When they came across there in 1571, the Spanish found stones with strange animals carved on them. They'd never seen an animal like that, so they brought the stones back to the King of Spain and said, what are these? He said, I don't know. They're called the Nazca burial stones. I have 3 of them in my museum here in Pensacola. I have 2 of them on the table with me tonight. One is a replica. I have 3 originals, though. These Nazca burial stones that are found down there have dinosaurs and humans together. Of the thousands of stones that were found, about 500 contain dinosaurs and humans together. They show all sorts of things like heart surgery, brain surgery, strange things on these stones. Dr. Baugh has 2 in Texas. Don Patton has 1. Dennis Swift has 2, I think, and we have 3. There's only 15 in the whole United States. 3 of them right here in Pensacola. Come on down and see our world-famous, small right now, but we're getting there, museum. We'll take over to Smithsonian here one day. Anton Willette's a friend of mine. He went down there and spent 8 months studying the Ica stones. Dennis Swift is a pastor in Oregon. He goes down there every year, talks to Dr. Takara about these Ica stones. Notice most of the dinosaurs shown on these stones have circles on the side. Now, when you find dinosaur bones, that does not tell you what his skin looked like, does it? Why would they put circles on the side of the dinosaur? Just about all of them show that. One of our stones in our museum shows what apparently is a man cutting the head off a dinosaur, and apparently they're trying to depict that inside the dinosaur's stomach was another man who had been killed by the dinosaur. So his friend killed the dinosaur as vengeance. You know, like the Bible says, vengeance is fine, saith the Lord. Or something like that. But very interesting story on some of these stones. And why did they put the circles on the skin? Well, nobody had ever found fossilized dinosaur skin until about 10 years ago, when a missionary in Bolivia found fossilized dinosaur skin. That missionary's sister lives in Milton, Florida. There's the phone number right there. Linda Mellon from Milton. They found this fossilized dinosaur skin. And guess what? There were circle patterns on the side. Now, how did they know to put circles on the sides of the dinosaurs if they hadn't seen a live one? Interesting. Here's a chief cutting the head off of one. Here's a fellow riding one. I'd be careful if I was going to do that. Ancient pottery sometimes shows dinosaurs. This one's from one of the tombs in Ica, Peru. One of the Indian mummies they found there in this tomb had a blanket wrapped around it. And all through the blanket they had woven pictures of dinosaurs. I'll blow it up for you so you can see it there. That's what they look like, woven all through that fabric. Dennis Swift has it in Oregon. I've held it in my hand, looked at it. Just amazing. Down in Acamburo, Mexico, You're from Mexico, right, brother missionary? You ever been to Acamburo? You know where that's at? Go to Mexico City, turn right, go about an hour and a half. Middle of nowhere. You've been to Mexico City? Okay, thank you, son. That's good. And you're his son. Okay, amen. In Acamburo, Mexico, they found 56,000 ceramic figurines of dinosaurs and people together. The people in the town are real quiet about it because it just really upsets all the theories about evolution. But John Turney's been down there many times studying the Acamburo figurines. They're telling us in school nobody's ever seen a dinosaur. Kids, don't you believe that for a second. An Italian peasant killed a dinosaur apparently in 1572. They had it mounted for a museum display. Smacked it on the head. Apparently it was a Tanistropheus. Roman swords were found in Tucson, Arizona. And by the way, you're going to be told in school Columbus was the first white man across the ocean. That is simply not true. Brendan the Navigator came from Ireland in 500 AD. The Romans came back and forth across the ocean all the time. Hebrew coins from about the time of Christ were found in Ohio in a burial mound. And Roman swords were found in Tucson, Arizona. One of the swords has a dinosaur on it. I called the man who has the sword, Tom Peterson. There's his phone number. I said, Tom, what do you think about this sword? He said, well, it has to be fake because we know man and dinosaurs did not live at the same time. Does he know that or does he think that? He thinks that. He doesn't know that, does he? During the age of sailing ships, there are many stories of people sighting sea monsters. Missionary Hans Egede reported sighting a sea monster. A fellow came to me in church when I was speaking up in New England someplace, and he said, Mr. Hovind, my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is Hans Egede, and I have his diary. I thought, I would like to see this. He gave me copies of it. And he tells in that diary about him spotting a sea serpent. Very interesting, off the coast of Greenland. Here's the story that he said from the diary. As for other sea monsters, none of them have been seen by us or any of our time that I ever could hear, save the most dreadful monster that showed itself upon the surface of the water in the year 1734 off our new colony, that's Greenland, in 64 degrees. This monster was so huge in size that coming out of the water, its head reached as high as the masthead. Its body was as bulky as the ship and 3 or 4 times as long. It had a long pointed snout and spouted like a whalefish. Great broad paws, and the body seemed covered with shellwork. Its skin very rugged and uneven. The underpart of its body was shaped like a huge serpent, and it dived under the water. It plunged backward into the sea and so raised its tail aloft, which seemed a whole ship's length distant from the bulkiest part of its body. Missionary to Norway said he saw a sea serpent in 1755. On board the HMS Daedalus, Captain McKay said he and his crew watched as a 60-foot sea serpent swam under their boat. The sailors on board said, Captain, please don't mention this in the logbook because we're going to get laughed at. Well, he put it in the logbook anyway, and he even got called in by the admiral. He said, what are you doing talking about a sea serpent? Don't you know they don't exist? He said, Admiral, I saw it. He said, it was so close, if it had been a man of mine acquaintance, I could have recognized him easily. So that was his story. During the 1850s, the whaling ship Monongahela set sail to go catch whales, and instead they killed a sea serpent, 103 feet 6 inches long. It had 4 swim fins, an alligator-like head, and 94 very sharp teeth. Another ship stopped to see what they were working on, and they saw them cutting up this giant sea serpent. The folks on the Monongahela said, look, you've heard about sea serpents? You've heard sailors get laughed at? Come take a look. Here's one right here. We killed it. The other shoe bought the sea serpent oil off of them and sailed back to port to tell the story. The captain of the Monongahela said, we're going to go catch a few whales. We'll be back in a few months. Well, the Monongahela never showed up. Apparently it got sank in a storm. The officer on board the Campania, Arthur Henry Ralston, who later helped rescue the folks on the Titanic, by the way, he said he sighted off the coast of Cork, Ireland, a long-necked object which he sketched as it moved, turning its head from side to side. He stated that what he saw was a sea serpent. Now, this book is called Titanic, Triumph and Tragedy. I want you to look at the next sentence in the book. The author said, however imaginative the young officer may have been. Do you see any prejudice in that statement? You know, like if you claim you saw a sea serpent, we know you're a little bit, loco a la cabeza, right? A little crazy. A German submarine commander sank a British ship during World War I, and he said when it exploded underwater, a giant 60-foot animal came flying up out of the water. There are stories of octopus actually pulling ships underwater. You say, come on, octopus don't get that big. Oh, they get pretty big. This one washed up on the beach in St. Augustine, Florida, 100 years ago. The octopus was 200 feet across and weighed 5 tons. That's a big octopus. A whale was killed near Seattle, Washington. Inside the whale's stomach was one arm to an octopus. It was 150 feet long. See, whales love to eat octopus. And if a whale eats too much octopus, he'll get sick and puke it back up. And if you ever see a piece of puked up octopus floating around in the ocean, be sure to grab it. It's worth a lot of money. Does anybody know what they make out of puked up octopus? Yes? Oil? Perfume. That explains a few things, doesn't it, fellas? Hey, dear, you smell like a puked up octopus. You know, whales love to eat octopus and squid, but octopus and squid never stop growing. There have been some awfully big squid seen out there in the ocean. A Navy research vessel saw a giant squid attacking a giant whale in 1966 off the coast of Newfoundland. At Yale University, they've got the model of a giant squid hanging over my head there, Peabody Museum. This baby giant squid washed up on the beach in New Zealand. They said full grown it would have been 150 feet long. That's a big squid. People say, now wait a minute, if dinosaurs always lived with man, like you're saying, why aren't they mentioned in the Bible? Well, they are. Dinosaurs are in the Bible. Now, the word dinosaur isn't used. That word wasn't made up till later, you know. But they're called other names, which I'll show you. If you get the book of Job, the book of Job has 42 chapters. In the first 2 chapters, it says Job was a perfect man. He feared God and hated evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he had thousands of sheep and camels and oxen and asses. The guy had lots of money. Okay, he was extremely wealthy. And one day the messenger came and said, Job, I have some bad news. All of the oxen and asses were stolen, and your servants all got killed. And by the way, your sheep all got burned up, and the camels got stolen too. Now, Job was having a bad day, called the Hebrew stock market crash. That's where the word stock market comes from, I think. Stock, you know, animals, never mind. Another messenger came and said, Job, guess what? All 10 of your kids just died. Then Satan gave Job boils from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. And to top it off, his wife turned against him. Job's really having a bad day. And then, to really top it off, his 4 friends came to comfort him. One of these guys was the shortest man mentioned in the Bible, Bildad the Shuhite. That's pretty short, folks, okay? But these 4 guys, Bildad, Eliphaz, Zophar, and Elihu, they came and talked to Job for 35 chapters. They had to be Baptists, the way I got it figured. They came and said, Job, everything's going wrong, huh? We know why. You sinned. Now listen, Job, folks here. If something bad happens to you, or something bad happens to one of your friends, you might not know why it happened. If one of your friends has something bad happen, best thing for you to do is comfort them, love them, encourage them, and shut up. Don't go to the hospital when they get their gallstones taken out and say, hey, brother, these aren't gallstones. These are tithes and offerings. God's getting them out of you one way or another. Don't do that. You don't know why it's happening. Let God take care of those kind of things. You just pray for them, encourage them, and love them. See, finally, in chapter 31, Job's 4 friends have been talking to him now for a long time. He said, man, I wish the Lord would answer me. Why did this happen? And folks, you don't have to live very long on this planet before you're going to be asking this question. Lord, I wish you'd answer me. Why did you allow this to happen? See, Job didn't know about Romans 8:28. Hadn't been written yet, but it was coming. God said, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are the called according to His purpose. This verse does not say everything that happens is good. It says everything will work together for good, doesn't it? Here's how it works. Has anybody here ever been hungry? You ever been hungry before? Suppose you come to my house, you knock on the door. Mr. Hovind, I'm hungry. I'll say, hey, come on in. I'm going to give you a cup of flour. That'll satisfy you. You say, ugh. Well, how about a teaspoon of salt? Now, that'll taste good. Or better yet, a spoonful of baking soda. I got it. Lay your head back. We're going to pour in a half a cup of Crisco. and chase it down with a cup of buttermilk. How about if we mix them all together and make biscuits? Oh, hey, now we're talking. See, the individual ingredients would taste lousy, but they work together for biscuits, don't they? And the individual things in your life might not be very good, but they will work together for good if you love God. So really all you need to worry about in this world is keeping your heart right with God. That'll be tough to do because the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. So finally, Job has had enough. And he's talking to God, and finally God says, okay, Job, I'm going to answer you. And in Job chapter 38, the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind. Boy, if a tornado starts talking to me, I'm going to pay attention. And the Lord said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? I read that 33 years ago as a brand new Christian, and I thought, what a dumb question. Where were you when I built the earth? I thought, God, why would you ask Job a question like that? He wasn't there when you made the world. You know that. Why would God ask him a question like that? See, God asked Job question after question after question. Job never said a word. He never answered one of God's questions. God asked him 84 questions. I think God's not trying to get an answer. God's trying to change Job's attitude. See, God understands the things that you think. He knows your thoughts. And Job was being asked all these questions by God to change his attitude. God said, who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Question. Job doesn't answer. God just kept asking him question after question. He said, hast thou entered into the springs of the sea? Did you know scientists did not know there were springs in the sea till 1977? God asked Job this question nearly 4,000 years ago. Science is slowly catching up with just a few parts of the Bible. God said, where is the way where light dwelleth? As for darkness, where is the place thereof? Interesting wording. See, light is in a way, it's always moving. Darkness doesn't move. Darkness has a place. Light has a way. Interesting. God said, by what way is the light parted which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? Did you know the Bible teaches the light causes the wind? The weatherman didn't even know about that until about 100 years ago. But that's exactly right. The sunlight heats up the ground, makes the air expand, and the wind is driven by the sunlight. Just like God said. God said, canst thou send lightnings? Boy, it's a good thing I can't. How many of you can think of somebody that's lucky to be alive because you can't send the lightnings? Can you think of a few? Phil, I bet you can think of a few, can't you? Yes, sir, brother. God asked Job question after question after question after question. 84 questions by my count. Job never answered one. See, these are the kind of questions that don't need an answer. The question is designed to change the person's attitude. It's the same kind of questions you dads have to ask your kids. See, I have 3 children, and they're all married now and all work for me. But I know how this works. Kids get to a certain age, and they start to get kind of cocky, and they think, they should make the rules around the house. The kid comes in one day and says, hey, Dad, listen, I believe I should be allowed to stay out till 4 in the morning with my friends. After all, I'm 10 now. And Dad says, hold on just a minute, kid. You'd like to know why you can't stay out till 4 in the morning. Well, son, let me ask you a few questions. Who pays the electric bill around this house? Who's paying for the house? Who pays the insurance? Who bought those clothes you're wearing, son? Who pays for the food you eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat? Who paid for the hot water and soap you took a shower with? About a month ago. Let's just get it straight right now, son. The Bible is very clear on this topic. He who payeth the bills maketh the rules. Second Opinions, chapter 4. You see, son? Me, Dad, you, kid. And if you're going to sleep under my roof and eat my food, you're going to do it my way. And when you want to do it your way, well, then you get your own roof to sleep under and get your own food to eat, and you can do it your way. That's the golden rule, son. He that hath the gold maketh the rules. Who do you think you are, kid? Where were you when we got this property and cleared off this land and drove off to grizzly bears and walked uphill to school 40 miles in the snow, barefoot, both ways? me, Dad, you kid. I think that's what God is doing to Job. All God did to Job was ask him 84 questions. God never did tell Job why his kids died. He never did tell him why his livestock was stolen. He never did tell him any of that. All he did was ask him question after question after question. Hey, would you keep serving God if everything went wrong and you never found out why? Job did. We come to chapter 40. And God said, behold now behemoth. Now what on earth is a behemoth? Some reference Bibles say it must be the elephant or hippopotamus. No, it cannot be either of those, okay? I believe behemoth is the long-necked dinosaur. Probably the Brachiosaurus. There are actually 13 different long-necked dinosaurs. The Brachiosaur, the Cetosaur, Mamenchosaur, the Seismosaur, the Blondosaurus. You just have to talk to her kind of slow, okay? But God said, behold now behemoth eats grass as an ox. You say, now Brother Hovind, elephants eat grass, and my Bible says elephant. Well, a lot of animals eat grass, okay? Look at the next verse. His strength is in his loins, his force is in the navel of his belly. The biggest part on him is his belly. You say, well, elephants have a big belly. Yep, I've seen them. Hippopotamus have a big belly. I've seen them too. Brachiosaurus has a big belly. He has a big belly. Next verse says, he moveth his tail like a cedar. His tail is like a cedar tree. Have you ever seen an elephant's tail? Not like a cedar tree, is it? How about a hippo tail? Not like a cedar tree. You know, before they put those comments about the Bible in the Bible, they ought to at least read it. Don't you think, brother? Before they put a comment about it, they ought to at least read it once. You know, it can't be an elephant hippopotamus. They don't have a tail like a cedar tree. I mean, come on. It has to be something like the Brachiosaurus. Now, that would have a tail like a cedar tree. Next verse says, his bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. They had big, heavy-duty bones. I have a toe bone in my museum. You can come by and see a real toe bone from a Brachiosaurus. Now, kids, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. Those little bones in his toe, like you have 3 bones in your finger, what I have is the second phalange, second toe bone of a dinosaur. Now, the reason they had those big toe bones is because he had big toes. How many can figure that out with no help? He had those big toes because he had a big foot. There's a kid taking a bath in a dinosaur footprint. Pictures on the back of the book right here on the table. He had that big foot because he had a big leg to hold up. Their front leg is 20 feet tall. You know, the biggest dinosaur ever found was found in Oklahoma. It was 60 feet tall. They say it'll take them 20 years to dig it out of the ground because it is a government project. They say the biggest one, when it was alive, probably weighed about 100 tons. That's equal to 14 school buses put together. That means if he was to come by and step on you, you would be deeply impressed by him. I don't know if it'd be impressed or depressed. Maybe I can get an English teacher to help me out with that one. Or both, okay? You'd be road pizza when he got done, right? Speaking of government projects, I need to share with you my new invention. I have invented something that's going to make me the richest man in the world. I'm going to save so much money for the highway department, especially the crew that did Highway 29 a couple years ago, the military, and utility companies. And all I want is 10% of the savings. I'll be the richest man in the world. I have invented a shovel that will stand up by itself. You won't need to pay those guys to lean on it anymore. Yep, well, thank you. Job 40:19 says, he is the chief of the ways of God. The chief. That's the Hebrew word risheth. He's the chief. He's the principal. He's the beginning. He's the biggest animal God ever made. Well, that would not be the elephant hippopotamus. It'd be the Brachiosaurus. See, the translators in the King James translation did not know a lot about dinosaurs. When they came to this word, they knew about elephants and hippopotamus. They just said, this is behemoth, giant animal. They didn't know what it was. Today we know about dinosaurs, but they lived at a time when most of them were extinct and the bones hadn't been found yet. So kind of a limbo time there where they said, look, it's just a big animal. We don't know what it is. But he's the chief of the ways of God. You know, it kind of fits the pattern for the way the devil works, though. When God makes beautiful things, the devil tries to destroy them or use them for his glory. God invented music. God loves music. And Satan has tried to twist it and use ungodly music to destroy our culture. Somebody asked me one time, they said, Brother Hovind, do you know what you get if you play country music backwards? I said, no. They said, you get your wife, your hound dog, and your pickup, all back. Oh yeah, backmasking. I heard about that stuff, right? And God invented marriage and the family and sex. God made them male and female, and he understands it pretty good, and he put some rules down. Boys, don't touch the girls till you're married to them. Now, if you don't want to touch them, then stay away from me, please, okay? I saw your kind in San Francisco. But God put the rules down because he wants the best. He said the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. God doesn't want you hunting for the precious life. He wants you to have the precious life. Not be hunting for it all your life. And God created the great animals, the great whales, the living creatures. God made the dinosaurs. And Satan said, you know, there has to be some way I can use dinosaurs against God. But the devil couldn't fool Adam. You kidding? Adam named him. Can you imagine the devil coming to Adam saying, hey Adam, did you know dinosaurs lived millions of years ago? Adam would say, are you dumb or what? There's one in the backyard eating off my cherry tree right now. The devil couldn't fool Noah, not with dinosaurs. Noah fed him every morning. But for the next 4,000 years, most of them were killed off or died off. And by the early 1800s, when they found the bones and started putting them together in museums, the devil said, here's my chance. Everybody has forgotten about dinosaurs. You know, out of sight, out of mind. And the devil said, I think I'm going to tell these people that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. And if they believe it, it'll make them doubt the Bible. And boy, has it worked well for the last 200 years. You know, boys and girls go to kindergarten and they get a book that says, boys and girls, we can read about dinosaurs. Would anyone like to take just a wild guess at what the first sentence in the book says? Millions of years ago. How did you know? You're 8 years old. And you knew it too, okay? And you're only 5 years old, right? Why do all the dinosaur books start off, you know, millions of years ago? You think there's any books like this in the library in your public school? How about the public library? You think the kids are going to face this type of teaching on TV? Discovery Channel? Animal Kingdom? Animal World? Millions of years ago. How many kids are being taught that in your town at your expense? I go to museums all the time, and I just get sick and tired of all the kids going through these museums, seeing these little signs, you know, 70 million years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth. It's about time somebody gets interested in reaching these kids with the truth. And some of you ought to quit worrying about knocking that stupid ball into the hole in the dirt and start worrying about what the kids are being taught. And get yourself some tracts or some videotapes or something and go out and stand at these museums and give these kids the truth about dinosaurs. Because there are thousands and thousands of kids in Pensacola who believe dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. And they don't realize it yet. But that's going to cause them to really question any belief in the Bible for all of their life. Satan starts kids when they're 3 years old with dinosaurs. I spoke at a public school one time to 300 first graders. Try that sometime. I had all these kids in the room and I said, boys and girls, when did dinosaurs live? Instantly, all of them shouted out, millions of years ago. These kids can barely read. How do they know this already? And why aren't the Christians getting their message across? Next verse here and we'll quit. The Bible says, he lieth under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fens. The word fens is the Old English word that means the swamp. Behemoth lives in the swamp. Did you know the largest swamp in the world is in the middle of Africa? It is 55,000 square miles. There's what it looks like next to the United States. Africa's huge. You kids are going to be taught that all the continents used to fit together, Pangea. That is baloney. They shrank Africa 35 or 40% to make them fit. They do not fit together. We covered that on video number 6. But this swamp in Africa is 80% unexplored today. Did you know there have been about 30 expeditions into that swamp in the last 20 years? They all come back saying there are dinosaurs still alive. Small ones, probably the Apatosaurus or Cetosaurus. like this one. If you show this to the natives that live in the swamp, they'll say, yep, that's Mokele Mbembe. He still lives in the swamp. They're not as big as they used to be, and certainly not very plentiful. We cover more on that in the next session about dinosaurs that are still alive. There have been an amazing number of sightings of dinosaurs still alive in this century. Actually, over 20,000 reported sightings of dinosaurs. I receive calls and letters just about every week from somebody somewhere in the world that says, Brother Hovind, I saw your tape, and I've never told anybody this because they think I was crazy, but I saw one of those. People are just afraid to say what they've seen because of the teachings that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. Dead one washed up on the beach in California in 1925. The neck was 20 feet long. One atheist wrote me a letter and said, Hovind, you're so stupid. Don't you know that was a whale? Just exactly where is the neck on a whale? Please show that to me. We'll cover lots more on dinosaurs still living in the next session. Thank you so much. All right, welcome to the second half of our video number 3 on dinosaurs in the Bible. In this section, we're going to talk about dinosaurs that are still living. The Bible teaches there was a canopy of water when God first made the earth. We covered that on video number 2. And dinosaurs lived with man in the original creation. They were just big lizards, giant reptiles. They always lived with man. They did not live millions of years ago. And there's ample evidence throughout history that dinosaurs have lived with man, from Ica stones and cave drawings and all sorts of legends of dragons. But what about dinosaurs still alive? Could it be that there are a few of them still around? Most of the textbooks say dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. Now just hold on a minute. They don't know that. In Job chapter 40, it describes an animal called Behemoth, and it says he lives under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fens, the swamp. Well, the biggest swamp in the world is in the middle of Africa, 55,000 square miles, bigger than the entire state of Arkansas, where our past president and her husband Bill came from. This was a big swamp, 55,000 square miles. And there have been many reports of people citing dinosaurs still living in that swamp. The Congo swamp was taken over by Belgium in 1885, up until 1960 when the communists liberated them. You know, the communists will liberate countries. They killed everybody and said, okay, you're free now. But from early 1700s, actually, when the missionaries went into that swamp, they reported strange animals, like dinosaurs. This article appeared in the New York Herald in 1910. After some explorers came back from Africa, they said there could be dinosaurs still alive in the swamp in Africa. This article appeared in the Saturday Evening Post, 1948. There could be dinosaurs still living. In 1980, Roy Mackal went there and reported dinosaurs still living. A South African big game hunter returned from a trip to Angola and announced to the Cape Town newspaper that there was an animal of large dimensions, the description of which could only fit a dinosaur. The natives called it the Chippewa. Over in Central African Republic, they have a different name for it, Nguri, depending on their language, of course. Roy Mackal went there in 1980. He's University of Chicago microbiology professor. He's now retired, lives in California. He went back in 81 and spent $250,000 on the expedition. He came out saying, folks, there are dinosaurs still living. He wrote a book about it, The Living Dinosaur, in search of Mokele Mbembe. They say the swamp is the most miserable place in the world. Mosquitoes land on you at the rate of about 1,000 per hour the entire time you're there. Relentless attack of mosquitoes, swarming around you like dust. The natives report an animal called Mahamba, which is a crocodile that gets up to 50 feet long. When Dr. Mackal showed them a picture of an Apatosaurus, they said, oh, that's a Mokele Mbembe. Dr. Mackal said, fellows, that's a dinosaur. They've been dead for 70 million years. And the natives said, we're sorry, we didn't know about that. See, we've never been to America to learn about evolution. All we know is we see them out there in the swamp once in a while. Now, they're not very big. They're about 20 feet long, nose to tail. It's a lot smaller than the fossils we find of them. But they're still the same kind of creature, a dinosaur. The natives report that these animals live underwater. They are very rarely seen. Even the folks who live there very rarely see them, because they're active at night, and the natives do not go out at night. They're scared enough to go out in the daytime in that swamp over there. But these animals are active at night, generally, though sometimes they're seen early in the morning. They live underwater. They stick their necks out and get plants along the side of the river called the molombo plant. That seems to be their favorite food. Here's a picture of Dr. Mackel showing a dinosaur footprint where they came out of the water on shore to get more of these molombo plants. Missionary Eugene Thomas was in the swamp for 42 years. Here's his phone number in Ohio. He's retired now. He said he had 2 pygmies in his church that helped kill and eat one of these creatures in the late 50s. Dinosaurs still alive? Marcelina Agnagna is a biologist from the Congo. He went into the swamp and said, man, I saw one myself, and there's what it looked like. He drew a sketch on the chalkboard. Dinosaur still alive. There have been many reports in this swamp of people sighting these creatures. There's a World Explorer magazine that has a lot of articles about people who go into the swamp to see dinosaurs still living. They say the humidity is terrible, and most of your equipment will be destroyed very quickly by the high humidity. It's very difficult. It's hard enough just to survive going through the swamp. I mean, there are no highways anywhere and no 911. Well, you can call, but nobody's going to answer. They say you can average about 1 mile per hour traveling through this swamp. If I told you you had to survey the entire state of Arkansas at 1 mile per hour, you better bring a lunch. You're going to be there a while. They describe this creature as having a long neck and a small head. Apatosaurus. One group got an audio tape of it making a roaring sound, sort of like a gecko lizard makes when its skin flaps out on its throat, and it flaps back. They got 5 minutes of this roaring sound. I've got a tape of it at home somewhere. I haven't been able to locate it for a while. But here's an article from the Boston Herald about people going to the African swamp to look for a living dinosaur. There have been just many, many expeditions into there. Cryptozoology.st is a website about creatures still living. The natives say these animals live in caves or underwater, and they're very rarely seen. You get to see them maybe once in a while. William Gibbons has been to the swamp 4 times. He and I wrote this book together, Claws, Jaws, and Dinosaurs, a book for junior high age about dinosaurs still living. Interesting. He said in one swamp they call it Lakila Mbembe. Here's what William Gibbons said. According to our guide, Pierre Sima, we were the first white men to actually penetrate the forest and swamps bordering the Bumba River. Our informants, almost all of them Baka pygmies, with the exception of one elderly Muslim Cameroonian, are perfectly familiar with all the known and unknown animals of the forest and swamps. While they do not regard Lokela Mbembe as being an unusual animal, they do fear the creature because of its ferocity in attacking hippos, elephants, and even crocodiles. The animal appears to be completely intolerant of any other large creature that shares the river and controls large stretches of the river, particularly those areas where its food supply is present. And call William Gibbons. He's been there 4 times. They have different names for this creature depending on their local language. Missionary Cal Bombay, he works for the 100 Huntley Street in Toronto, Canada, said he was a missionary in the Kenya part of Africa for years, and he and his wife saw one of these creatures, but the plates on the back were bigger. Down in the Amazon jungle in South America, they've got a huge swamp down there. Amazon jungle is known, of course, for its high humidity and tremendous plant growth. Back in 1907, Colonel Fawcett from the British Army went down there to survey the boundary between Peru and Brazil. He was an officer in the Royal Engineers, and everybody said he's a meticulous recorder of facts. He went to the Beni swamps and reported sighting a Diplodocus. This is 1907, not 70 million years ago. The natives said, oh yeah, that's the creature that lives out in the swamp. You know, don't go near him. His son, Brian Fawcett, made pictures, a sketch here, of the footprints that they found on the side of the river. Large, 3-toed saurian, dinosaur, footprints. Could there be some still around? In 1883, this article appeared in Scientific American. Before they started censoring out anything that goes against the evolution theory. Here's the article from 1883. It is 12 meters long from snout to the point of its tail, which latter is flattened. Found this giant animal. Here's the article, Scientific American. It said the Brazilian ministers at La Paz, Bolivia, had remitted to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Rio photographs of drawings of an extraordinary saurian killed on the Beni after receiving 36 balls. By order of the President of Bolivia, the dried body, which had been preserved in Asuncion, was sent to La Paz. It's 12 meters long from snout to the point of the tail, which latter is flattened, besides the anterior head. Describes the creature here. The heads look like a dog. They said it had three, looked like formed heads. Nobody knew for sure what they meant by that, but that's maybe in translation. They said the legs and belly and lower part of the throat appeared defended by a kind of scale armor, and all the back is protected by a still thicker and double cuirass, starting from behind the ears of the anterior head and continuing to the tail. The neck is long and the belly large and almost dragging on the ground. Professor Gilvetti, who examined the beast, thinks it is not a monster, but a member of a rare and almost lost species, as the Indians in some parts of Bolivia use small earthen vases of identical shape and probably copied from nature. Dinosaurs still alive? Snakes down there get pretty big, I know that. Here's a picture of a snake that swallowed a native who fell asleep on the job. Snakes get pretty big too, folks, you know. Colonel Fawcett reported he shot and killed a 62-foot anaconda snake. That's a big snake. The natives said, "Colonel, you should see the big ones." In 1933, the officials from the Brazil-Colombia Boundary Commission killed a 98-foot snake, 2 feet in diameter. The snake weighed 2 tons. That's a big snake. A cook from the hotel in Amazon jungle said he saw a 100-foot snake which the military had hunted down and killed after it had eaten 2 soldiers. The snake's head was 2 feet long. That's a good-sized snake. In 1948, this picture was taken, published in 1949, but of a giant snake floating down the Amazon River. Nobody poked it to see if it was alive, but they claimed it was 150 feet long. Of course, tough to tell, something floating in the river, but that's still a pretty good-sized snake. One of my former students was a missionary down there in Brazil. He said, "Brother Hovind, where we're at, in the middle part of Brazil, the Amazon River is 9 miles wide." That's a big river. There's a lake up in Scotland called Loch Ness. Has anybody ever heard of Loch Ness before? Many folks claim they have seen the Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness is 24 miles long, 1.5 miles wide, and nearly 1,000 feet deep in places. A very deep lake. In 1933, they took dynamite and blasted the rocks away to make a roadbed on the side of the mountain. Now, before 1933, if you wanted to see Loch Ness, you had to climb up the mountain and go down the other side, or start at the river and go 7 miles upriver to get into the lake. Very sparsely populated. So in 1933, they put this highway along the edge of the lake. Right away, folks began reporting the Loch Ness Monster. It had been seen before that numerous times and reported, but everybody thought it's just a local legend. You know, these guys are drinking too much whiskey or something. In 1933, the first year the road was done, there were 52 separate sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. This author said there have been 9,000 reported sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. Today it's over 11,000. This book was written back in the 60s. Of the 11,000 sightings, no doubt some are hoaxes and frauds. Okay, I wouldn't question that. I don't say they're all legitimate. But some very reputable folks claim they have seen the Loch Ness Monster. People like Sir Peter Scott, a member of Parliament. He says, "I've seen it." He said, "I think it's a plesiosaurus." They've got a website, lochness.co.uk. A plesiosaur is a long-necked swimming dinosaur. I've got one on the table right here. That is what the plesiosaur is supposed to look like. Almost everyone that sees Nessie says it's a plesiosaur. I've read probably 250 books just about Loch Ness and Loch Ness Monster. This one author said, "Others insist Nessie must be a plesiosaur. There's one thing wrong with this theory. Plesiosaurs became extinct 70 million years ago." Now, hold on a minute. Do you see how his training in school has crippled him to doing research? The evolution theory is a great hindrance to intelligent research. It's not a help. It's a hindrance. And if scientists were allowed to do research without being shackled by that dumb theory, I think we'd be much further ahead in science. A lot of things are being hindered by that silly theory. Arthur Grant was a veterinarian student. He nearly ran into Nessie on his motorcycle. He was crossing the road in front of him. Here's what Arthur said about it after almost hitting it. He said, "I had a splendid view of the object. In fact, I almost struck it with my motorcycle. It had a long neck and oval-shaped eyes on top of a small head. The tail would be from 5 to 6 feet long and very powerful. The curious thing about it was that the end was rounded off. It did not come to a point. The total length of the animal would be 15 to 20 feet. Knowing something of natural history, I can say that I have never seen anything in my life like the animal I saw. It looked like a hybrid. I jumped off my cycle and followed the animal, which had entered the lock with great speed. There was a huge splash from the disturbance of the surface. It had evidently made away before I reached the shore. By Arthur Grant. There's the sketch he drew of the creature that he saw crossing the road right in front of his motorcycle. The guy's a veterinarian student. He ought to know something about animals. Okay? He said, that's what I saw. Alexander Campbell was the game warden for Loch Ness for 47 years. He said he saw Nessie 18 times. First sighting back in the 1930s. Here's the sketch Alexander Campbell drew of the creature that he saw in Loch Ness. Cages have been built to try to capture the Loch Ness Monster. Many folks have drawn sketches of what they've seen. Not too many photographs in existence. Of course, people say, why don't they get a good picture? Well, that's a little easier said than done. I'll show you. Has anyone here ever seen a car accident? You saw it happen. I would like to see you get a picture of one as it happens. Even if the camera is sitting there beside you, accidents happen so quick, oh, I should have got a picture. If you don't stage the accident, I'd like to see a photo of one that somebody actually was ready and alert enough to get a picture as it happened. Not a video, just a still photo. That'd be interesting. But lots of folks claim they've seen the Loch Ness Monster. The Spicer family said they saw it crossing the road with a sheep in its mouth. Several reports like that. There are 3 sightings that I read about where somebody saw babies of the Loch Ness Monster, they assume. This fellow got a picture of a back sticking out of the water and a neck off to the far right. When they published this picture in Reader's Digest, they cropped off the head. You know, Reader's Digest, condensed edition. All they show is the back sticking out of the water, but that photograph is on the table right here from Reader's Digest, Strange Stories, Amazing Facts. MacLeod said he saw the Loch Ness Monster. He watched it through his binoculars for 9 minutes and drew this sketch of what he saw. He said his neck was long and it moved back and forth like a snake about to strike. After watching it for 9 minutes, that's the picture he drew of the creature in Loch Ness. Many folks report this creature, 11,000 of them. World Book Encyclopedia paid a fellow to bring a submarine from America over to Loch Ness and put it in the lake. There have been 3 submarine attempts. They say the water is like being in a giant mud puddle. It's very black, murky water. You go down a few feet and everything's black. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And it's 900 feet deep in places. The fellow Dan Taylor from Hardyville, South Carolina, built the mini-sub. He said, Nessie is pretty elusive. I thought I got her. Something was lying on the bottom and the wash from it threw my submarine way off course. Japanese put 24 boats in Loch Ness, sailed the entire length of the lake, taking sonar pictures of the whole bottom. First time in 1987 that the bottom of Loch Ness was mapped. They said the bottom is wrinkled up like a raisin. They had a sonar curtain as they scanned down this thing, and they said they picked up some large objects 300 feet down but couldn't tell what they were. Large objects that were moving, but they couldn't tell what they were with the sonar from that great distance. They said the bottom, though, is wrinkled up like a raisin with many places to hide, including, apparently, caves going back into the mountains. Maybe there are airlocks where the creature goes in the cave and comes up and has can breathe up in there. Don't know. Certainly a possibility to consider. Academy of Applied Science actually got a picture of a diamond-shaped flipper underwater. They did this with sonar-activated camera. They put it in 80 feet deep water with the camera and sonar and flash, so that if something swam in front, it would flash and take pictures. After getting pictures of all sorts of fish going by, they got this picture of a giant animal, the flipper on the side of its body. This article and picture appeared in Reader's Digest, showing Nessie with its mouth open. Many people report seeing humps sticking out of the water. The surgeon's photo is now claimed to be a fake, and it could indeed be a fake, I don't know. But it's interesting to me that everybody waited till the last guy died to announce it's a fake. They say the nephew of the surgeon on his deathbed confessed it was a fake. Well, we're taking their word for it. I mean, it may be true that it is a fake, I don't know, but it's interesting they waited till the last guy died. But Loch Ness is not the only lake. There are 7 other lakes reporting creatures like this. Loch Lochy, Loch Morag, Loch Shiel. There's the Cornwallis sea serpent. You're from Cornwallis area, right? This is what I was telling you about. The creature down there called Morgwar, the Cornish sea serpent. Many folks claim they have seen this creature. In the English Channel, there have been many reports of a creature called the English Channel sea serpent. In 1749, a marine monster was caught in England resembling, in some degree, an alligator, having two large fins which served for swimming or flying. It had two legs terminating in hoofs like those of an ass. Its body was covered with impenetrable scales. It had 5 rows of teeth. It had appeared in the dictionary or encyclopedia or something in the late 1700s. This creature washed up on the beach in Normandy, France. It was 35 feet long. 2 professors from Paris Natural History Museum analyzed the creature and said it was definitely not a whale, not a sea cow. It's possible we are in the presence of an unknown species, they said. This animal swam past a boat in Brazil, off the coast of Brazil, in the Atlantic Ocean. 2 experienced naturalists on board reported the creature had a dorsal fin 6 feet long and 2 feet high, a small head on top of a neck 7 or 8 feet long in front of the fin. They published it in an article in 1905. This fellow said, I saw swimming parallel to the ship underwater a curious creature around 4 feet long with a long neck and large flippers. I believe, as did my wife who also saw it, that it was a young plesiosaurus. A Queensland correspondent wrote me that a young plesiosaur was taken in a net off Mudgee Beach, Australia. He sent me a sketch which is like the one I myself saw off the coast of Greece. That's Sir Arthur Doyle. In New Zealand, there's a fishing place off to the right called the, I forget the name of it now, but the water's only 900 feet deep. The rest of the ocean's a lot deeper than that. But the Japanese do a lot of fishing right there. They were dragging their net 900 feet down when they pulled this creature up in their net. It was 32 feet long, 4,000 pounds, and had apparently 4 big flippers. It had a fin running down its back. It smelled horribly. When they set it down on the deck, it broke in half, and pus oozed out everywhere and stunk up the whole boat. And so they said, fellas, we don't know what it is, but we're throwing it back. We're not going to haul this thing back to Japan. You know how far it is from New Zealand to Japan at 12 miles an hour? So they shoved it overboard. But the naturalist on board made a sketch of what he thought it might have looked like. And they even made a special stamp for Japanese mail in 1977. Now, some American scientists who never saw the creature said, well, the samples they took of the skin, and they did save some skin samples, by the way, when they analyzed them, the protein was 96% similar to basking shark. And they said, see, that proves it's a shark. No, it doesn't prove it's a shark. It might have been a basking shark, I don't know. But the fellows who had it in their hands said, no, it's not a shark. We know what sharks are. It's a plesiosaurus. By the way, they make a big deal about apes and humans being 98% similar in their DNA. And yet they're very different creatures, right? And nobody's ever seen plesiosaur protein to know what it is supposed to look like. So just because it's 96% similar does not mean it is not a different creature. Protein called elastidin is one identified in the carcass. Okay? This creature was seen in Russia in a big lake up there. It's called Mystery of the Lake. What looked like a huge dinosaur washed up on Russia's north coast in 1994. The carcass was 39 feet long. Japan, on the upper island and one of the lower islands, has reports of a creature similar to Loch Ness Monster. On Lake Ikeda, they call the creature Issy. In China, they've got one they call a USO, unidentified swimming object. Sweden has had many reports of a creature in this lake up in central Sweden. 150 times it's been seen by 450 people since 1635. Canada has many reported lake monsters. We have the book on our website or on our table out here if you want to get hold of this book, Canada's Lake Monsters. This article says, Nessie's Canadian cousin. Scientists are believers. It's talking about the Ogopogo. The Ogopogo is the name they've given to the creature that lives in Lake Okanagan, just north of Spokane, Washington. In this huge lake, 80 miles long. Arlene Gall has spent a lifetime studying this. Now, she does not necessarily believe in creation, or at least young Earth creation. You know, she goes through all these sightings of these dinosaurs in this lake and says, wow, maybe one survived for millions of years. Man, maybe the Earth's not millions of years old. You know, there's another way to look at this. In this article by Mary Moon, it says right here, they were the latest among thousands to see something strange in this 80-mile-long lake in southern British Columbia. This article says, creature shows up in sonar scan, 40 to 50 feet long. A lake swimmer said he saw the creature swimming under him. It was 20 to 30 feet long. A big eye came up and looked at him while he's swimming across Lake Okanagan. Now that would make you think twice, wouldn't it? We sell this book called Cadborosaurus about the Cadboro Bay monster, which is up north of Seattle. Cadboro Bay. Caddy, as it's called, has been seen as far south as Oregon, up to British Columbia. Professor LeBlond at University of British Columbia published a paper on Caddy at a meeting of Canadian and American Societies of Zoology. The remains of a 3-meter-long carcass of an apparent juvenile were discovered in the stomach of a sperm whale. Adult caddies get about 22 feet long. They say the creature has a long neck and a short-pointed front flippers. A couple of pilots told me they have seen the creature in that lake. One guy caught a baby one in his dip net. It was 18 inches long. He pulled it up, put it in a bucket. He had to sleep that night on the lake in his boat. He just dropped anchor and slept out there. He said he could hear the creature scratching the side of the bucket all night trying to get out. And he didn't have a camera to take a picture, but he just drew a sketch and then threw it overboard. That's the sketch he drew right there of the creature he saw, the baby caddy that he captured. It's in the book Cadborosaurus. These 4 men claimed their boat was chased by a dinosaur. So I went up and interviewed one of them. The other 3 refused to talk about it. I interviewed this man for nearly an hour. I've got the interview on audio tape. Here's what he said. They were fishing at Cape Sable Island, Nova Scotia. I preached on that Cape Sable Island at a church up there. I met with him. His name is Keith Ross. He was 67 at the time. He said he'd been fishing out there since he's 5 years old. It's a fishing village. That's what everybody does up there, just about. He said the creature was 40 to 50 feet long when it chased their boat for 1 to 2 miles, with its head out of the water about 15 feet. So it's not a fish. It had a wide mouth and 4-foot tusks like a walrus, as well as other pointed sharp teeth about the size of his finger. I showed him a plesiosaur. He said it was close but not exact. What he saw had a 2-foot thick, 8 to 9 foot long neck and 9-inch diameter eyes on the side of the head. So it's not a fish. Set at an angle from the front, not on the side like a fish, I'm sorry. He could see no visible means of propulsion as it swam toward him. It was grayish-brown, covered in barnacles, and rough-textured, and did not appear to have scales. He said they were 6 miles south of Cape Sable Island, Nova Scotia. The water is 180 feet deep and flat calm. He said, I don't want to see it again. That's what he told me when I interviewed him. This thing washed up on the beach in Newfoundland several months ago. Nobody has a clue what it is or was. Again, typically they'll say, oh, it's a basking shark, and it could be, I don't know. But that's always their excuse to dismiss it. I think, though, we need to look at this a little more objectively to say dinosaurs probably always lived with man, and there could be a few stragglers still around. This book is available from our website also about monsters found in North America. I interviewed this man for 3 hours when I preached in Toronto, or in Quebec, Canada. Jacques Beauvais, he speaks French, is his name. Here's his address right here on the table. His website is tiftarea.com, Lake Monster. He collects sightings of the Lake Memphremagog monster. Lake Memphremagog goes out of Vermont up into Quebec, Canada. Many folks claim they have seen the Lake Memphremagog monster. Something has been seen in the Potomac River. It resembles the Loch Ness monster. Something's been seen on Block Island, which is south of Rhode Island. It actually belongs to Rhode Island. It's a part of the state there. This creature washed up on the beach. It was 14 feet long. Nobody knows what it was, and someone stole the bones. So now it's disappeared. In Lake Erie, many folks report a creature like Loch Ness monster in Lake Erie. It gets in the newspaper once in a while. Erie's Bessie matches Nessie. They describe the creature as black, about 35 feet long, and a snake-like head. This article came out in the paper, said, does Nessie have a cousin in Lake Erie? How about this article? Boaters spot the Erie monster. There's renewed speculation a large serpent-like creature makes Lake Erie its home. John Lyles, a Huron charter boat captain, and his wife Holly said they saw the snake-like creature about 2 nautical miles from Kelly's Island on July at 12 while aboard the 16-meter charter boat they run. Lyle said it moved up and down, not side to side like a snake. It was black or dark brown and humped its body 50 centimeters, 20 inches above the water. Estimated the length to be about 5 to 8 meters or 16 to 25 feet. I talked to John Kraft. I interviewed him. He photographed the Lake Erie monster. He said they were set up to take pictures of the sunset when this creature came swimming by with its head sticking out of the water. He got his camera lens put together real quick, and by the time he got zoomed in on it, the head was down. All he got was the back. He said, "Sorry, Brother Hovind, I didn't get the head out of the water, but that's what I saw." I interviewed him up in Pennsylvania. I talked with Pete Peterson. He runs the L&D bait shop. He's also a taxidermist. Here's his phone number right here. He told me he was walking on the beach of Lake Erie 6 years earlier and found a dead baby creature. It was 3 feet long, had 4 flippers and a small head on a long neck. He brought it back and mounted it. He's a taxidermist. That's the creature. Nobody has a clue what it was. Carl Baugh bought it. It's in his museum in Texas, but he hasn't put it on display yet because he doesn't know what it is either. He's trying to raise the money to get a DNA sampling to find out it's not a hoax. You know, we don't know for sure, but interesting, whatever it is. In Scituate Harbor, Massachusetts, in 1970, this thing washed up on the beach. It smelled horribly. You could smell it for 3 miles away. I went to Scituate Harbor and interviewed the sheriff. He said, "Mr. Hovind, I was one of the first people on the scene at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when this thing washed ashore. We got calls right away. Something stinks out here." He said, "I'm telling you, that was a sea monster." He said, some rock and roll station announced, "Hey, there's a sea monster laying on the beach," and people came from miles around, jammed the streets, blocked traffic in the middle of the night in Scituate Harbor, sleepy little town. Everybody went out there with a hatchet or butcher knife and cut off a piece to have a piece of the sea monster as a souvenir. By the time they got photographs of it, it was all beat up. And again, the folks claimed it was a basking shark, and they argued about it. Quite a few articles written about this creature, though. This man said, "I doubt that duels will be fought on the proper name for the monster. The experts at Woods Hole stating it is a basking shark, and Dr. John Hannon positively refusing to accept anything but a real sea serpent." And the health department said, "We don't care what it is. It stinks. It's going to contaminate the whole village," and they put dynamite under it and blew it out back into the water, into pieces. What are you going to do with, 10 tons of rotting meat laying on your beach? In 1925 in California, this creature washed up on the beach. California's Nessie. I talked to the man who wrote this article, William Roberts. He said, "Brother Hovind, it's really strange. I went to Berkeley to the archives, and I got pictures of this creature laying on the beach. There were many excellent photographs of this creature." He said, "When I published my article in Skin Diver magazine, 1989, I got so many calls, people said, 'Wow, that's amazing. Do another article.' He said, 'I went back to Berkeley to the archives, and the pictures were gone, and there was no record of them ever existing.'" Kind of strange. Some people really like that evolution theory, and anything that rocks the boat has to be quietly, swept under the rug. But you can see the nose coming down to the bottom of the screen, the eyeball on the right. The guy behind him has a rifle just in case it moves again. The neck was 20 feet long. And I told you I got that letter from the atheist. He said, "You're so dumb, Hovind. Don't you know that was a whale?" I just wrote back and said, "Please show me any neck on a whale. Just exactly where is the neck on a whale." It's not a whale. The people who examined it, like the president of the Natural History Society, said, "My examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth. The head is large. The neck 20 feet long. I would call it a type of plesiosaurus." During the 1930s and 40s, people were still reporting these creatures off the coast of California. The fishing fleet reported them. One boat captain said their whole crew of 12 men saw this creature. One report described the creature as surfacing near a fishing boat and staring at the crew with large, baleful eyes from a rounded head that topped a long, slender neck that stuck out of the water a distance of 8 or more feet. This book we sell, Monsters, Mysterious Sea Monsters. Now, most of these books are written by people who do not necessarily believe in creation. They're very fascinating stories. They do a good research and then come to the wrong conclusion. That maybe dinosaurs survived for millions of years. It never dawns on them to think, hey, maybe our theory's wrong, about millions of years. But in 1969, in New York, fishermen nearly dropped their rods when a giant creature swam under the bridge in New York City. It was chased by the harbor police. The creature was much bigger than a whale. The police chased it and lost track of it. There are reports of zeuglodons still living. This is a sort of like a dinosaur-type creature, swims in the water, but has 2 flippers. And the head is like an alligator, great big, huge alligator-like head, but only 2 front flippers. In Newport, Arkansas, in the White River, there were many reports for years of the White River monster. Not the white water monster. Okay, she's New York senator now. But many people reported the White River monster. In 1972 was the last sighting of the White River monster. I talked to the man who took the picture. His name is Cloyce Allen. He said, Mr. Hovind, I took a whole roll of pictures of that thing because we've been out there fishing for years, and everybody laughed at it, laughed at us, claiming there's a big animal in this water. He said the river was 100 feet deep right there. The White River was in Newport or Jacksonport, Arkansas. It filled in a big rainstorm in '73, I think, and it's only about 50 feet deep now, or at least last report. But he said, I had this roll of film, excellent pictures of this creature. I took them to the newspaper office and said, here, I didn't even take them out of the camera. I don't want to be accused of fraud. You guys develop the film and publish the pictures. Well, they deal mainly with black and white film at the newspaper, and so they just assumed it was black and white film, and they developed it with black and white developer and ruined the entire roll of color film. They said, Mr. Warren, we have some bad news. We wrecked your film. He said, man, I don't know if I can get more pictures, but I'll try. And he got this photograph showing just the bumps down the back going across the screen there. On the far right would be the head, what he said was the head of this creature. That was like a giant alligator head. But it hasn't been seen since '72. In 1973, though, Arkansas designated that stretch of the river as a monster sanctuary. It is unlawful to molest, kill, trample, or harm the White River monster. In Jupiter, Florida, there have been many reports of a creature similar to this, like a plesiosaur, swimming off the coast of Jupiter, Florida. I met this man, and he said, Mr. Hovind, in the 1950s, I was flying off Jupiter, Florida. It was 7 or 8 miles out over the Gulf Stream. The water was glass calm. Suddenly, I saw an animal. Its head came out of the water, and its eyes stayed trained on me as I made another pass. It appeared to be 30-plus feet long. Having seen the creature taken by the Japanese fishing boat, and later the drawing in the National Enquirer, I would say this is the same creature. I did not tell anyone, for fear they would think I was nuts. I was working for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft Company with high security. Later, my brother and I caught a pygmy sperm whale for the Miami Sea Aquarium. I hope this will further support your belief. There have been so many reports, and just about everywhere I go, someone will come and say, Brother Hovind, I've seen one, but I never told anybody. Because they're going to think you're crazy. There's a lake between New York and Vermont called Lake Champlain, where many folks claim they've seen the Lake Champlain monster. I mean, there have been hundreds of reported sightings of this creature. This book is called Champ, Beyond the Legend. It's out of print now, but if you have an old copy, I'd like to get some more back. We bought every one they had. We sold it till they ran out. This photograph on the front was taken by Sandy Mancy. I went and met with Sandy Mancy, interviewed her. We put the interview of me talking to Sandy at the end of this tape. And you can listen to Sandy. In one of our conversations, I said, Sandy, do you think you saw a dinosaur? She said, no. I know I saw a dinosaur. She and her husband and 2 kids watched it for 10 minutes. When I showed her the plesiosaur, she said, yeah, it looked like that, but the neck was shorter. In 1998, Discover magazine ran this article. They said, in Lake Champlain, 58 passengers aboard the Ethan Allen reported that a creature 30 to 35 feet long with 3 to 5 humps cruised with their boat about 200 feet off the port side for 5 minutes. The skipper said, don't tell me it was a carp or a sturgeon. If it was a fish, it weighed 3,000 or 5,000 pounds. That's what he said about it. The Bible talks about these dragons in the waters, the dragon in the sea. Right here in Pensacola, Florida, back in 1962, 5 teenagers in their late teens went scuba diving to go out to the Massachusetts. The sunken ship in the harbor out here, you know, how many have seen the Massachusetts out there? One kid survived. Here's the story he told. He was about 18 years old when this happened. He said, we were in an Air Force rescue raft bound for a sunken ship a few miles off the coast. Midway out, we were caught in a storm and dragged out to sea. When the storm cleared, we were in a dense fog, and we began to hear strange noises. rather like the splashing of a porpoise. Also a sickening odor like that of dead fish. The noise got closer to the raft, and we heard a loud hissing sound. Out in the fog, we saw what looked like a long pole about 10 feet high, sticking straight up out of the water. On top was a bulb-like structure. I think he's meaning shaped like a light bulb, round on one end with a pointed on the other end, like the creature. That's my interpretation here. Okay? It bent in the middle and went under. It appeared several more times, getting closer to the raft. The silence was broken once again by something out of the fog. I can only describe it as a high-pitched whine. We panicked. All 5 of us put on our fins and went into the water. "Keep together and try for the ship," I yelled. After we were in the water, we became split up in the fog. From behind, I could hear the screams of my comrades one by one. I got a closer look at the thing just before my last friend went under. The neck was about 12 feet long, brownish green and smooth looking. The head was like a sea turtle, except more elongated. He said the eyes were green with oval pupils. In a different story, because he did several interviews right after this happened, Pensacola News Journal said, "We're not going to tell people got eaten by a sea monster. We're just going to publish that they drowned." So that's what the News Journal said. They said, "You realize this is, people come here for the beach. What would happen to tourism? Look what happened with the shark attacks. Who wants to go swimming now?" In another book, though, this guy said, "I don't know how long it was before we heard a scream. It lasted maybe half a minute. Then I heard Warren call, 'Hey, help me, it's got Brad. I've got to get out of here.' His voice was cut off abruptly by a short cry. 'Brad, Warren, hey, where is everybody?' I yelled back at the top of my lungs. Larry now swam with Eric and me. Warren and Brad were nowhere in sight. Right next to Eric, that telephone pole-like figure broke water. I could see the long neck and 2 small eyes. The mouth opened and it bent over. It dove on top of Eric, dragging him under. I screamed and began to swim past the ship. My insides were shaking uncontrollably." He was the only survivor. He said, "I finally made it to the ship, stayed there the rest of the night. Next morning, swam to shore and was found by the rescue unit." That's the sketch he drew. I found Edward Bryan McCleary. He now lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and refuses to talk about it. I called. He said, "Oh." Handed the phone to his wife. She said, "Mr. Hovind, you don't understand. I don't know what happened to my husband, but when he was a teenager, something happened in Pensacola, Florida, and he became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And right now he's a recovering alcoholic. He's working in an alcohol rehab center, and he doesn't want to talk about it." I said, "Okay." But I think if he understood how it all fit into biblical perspective, it would make a lot more sense to him. I was preaching in Fort Walton Beach, and a lady came and said, "Mr. Hovind, my son was one of the kids who was eaten. The story you are telling is exactly correct." Happened back in 1962. I told this story in Panama City when I was preaching, and the Lutheran church had sent their youth director to the meeting. He said, "Mr. Hovind, I was driving the van for our church, and all of my teenagers and I were going over the bridge into Panama City, and we saw a creature look just like that out in the water in Panama City." Wow. Could it be we've been brainwashed about the idea of dinosaurs living millions of years ago? I mean, is it just possible that maybe God's Word is correct and dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago? There have been many reports of pterodactyls still living. I can go 2 days on this, so I'll shorten this down and then we'll close this here. But there are lots of reports of pterodactyls still flying around. In Africa, they call the creature the kangamato. I got a call one day at my office, and this guy said, "Mr. Hovind, my name is," and he gave this huge name. He said, "I'm from Africa." He said, "The people here call me Steve because they can't pronounce my first name." So we called him Steve Romandi. He said, "I'm on the Kenya Olympic team. I'm a runner, I think 500 kilometers or something like that." He said, "I'm a student going to school at Louisiana State University." He said, "I just saw your videotape, and you mentioned pterodactyls are still alive." He said, "I didn't know they're called pterodactyls. We call them the kangamato, but you're right, they're still alive. We have them in our village back in Kenya." He said their favorite food to eat is decaying human flesh. So if somebody dies, you have to bury them real deep and put rocks on top, or kangamato will come dig them up and eat them. That's what he told me. Frank Melland, the African explorer, kept hearing about the much-feared creature called the kangamato, said to live in the swamps near Rhodesia at the Belgian Congo. He asked the natives what it was. They told him it was a bird. Not exactly a bird, though, more like a lizard with wings of skin like a bat. When he showed them a picture of a pterodactyl, they said, "That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the bat." Kangamato. Right there. That's showing them a pterodactyl. 2 cowboys shot and killed a pterodactyl, apparently, in Arizona in 1890. They couldn't drag the whole thing back, so they cut off the wingtips and took them back to the local saloon and nailed them up on the wall. Say, hey, fellas, what is this? We don't know. Whatever it was, we just killed one out in the desert. Missionary came to me and said, Brother Hovind, I've got people in my church in Venezuela that we try to deal with, these natives down there. They're scared stiff at the giant bat. I kept trying to talk to him. What is this giant bat you're afraid of? Here's the story that he told me. He said this bat was said to capsize canoes and carry off Indians. I met with him in '98. He told me the Indians, terrified of this great bat, had sent one of their bravest men to the head of the river where they killed one of the creatures about 30 years ago and buried it near the Mawada River. When Clint showed the Indians a picture of a pterodactyl, their eyes got big as saucers and they said, that is the bat. They were identifying this as the creature still alive in the swamps in Venezuela. Even today, he said the Indians will not drink or fish from the river for fear of this creature. There's an island to the left of Borneo, of Java and Papua New Guinea and all this. This island off to the left is called Seram. On some maps it's spelled with a C, E-R-A-M. But in Indonesia, the natives say there's a creature that has leathery wings, 4.5 feet tall. They call it orang batai, which means man with wings. Like orangutan, this is orang batai, man with wings. Missionaries occasionally report these creatures, active at night, and 3 to 4 foot wingspan. Not a bat. Dr. Ball has been down there several times. He's reported that some folks in his expeditions have seen these creatures, and they claim they have a glow to them. They glow in the dark. One theory is it might be bioluminescent organisms are growing in their fur when they live in caves all day. In one area they call it the Ropin. Mr. Jerry Williams, missionary for 28 years, is sending churches in Bloomington, Illinois. When I was preaching there, he said, Mr. Hovind, the other missionaries that I've talked to that have lived here for a long time, they said there are still pterodactyls on these islands. But everybody thinks they're crazy. The American soldiers that were fighting in there during World War II reported these creatures. Small pterodactyls in the island of these islands down here all over Indonesia. Charlie Knight in Washington said he saw one of these in 1965. He saw 2 of them actually circling for almost a minute. Dark brown with a crest on the back of the head. I talked to him in Spokane back in January of 2001. The Indians have legends of the Thunderbird. The Sioux Indians reported a giant bird was hit by lightning, fell to the ground. When they found the bones a few days later, the buzzards had already picked it clean to the bones. But they said the wingspan was 20 feet and had a long bony bump on the back of its head. Here's an Indian prayer stick from Colorado. Notice the bump on the back of the head. This is the head of a pterodactyl. Now, Henry Ford named a car the Thunderbird, but he put an eagle on the taillight. Henry, it should have been a pterodactyl. You need to study your history just a little more before you name your cars. The French sent some missionaries, explorers, Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet, traveled down the Mississippi in 1675. They stopped where today is the town of Alton, Illinois, by St. Louis. They saw this big bird painted on the cliff. They asked the Indians, they said, what is that big ugly bird? They said, oh, that's a piasol bird. He used to live in the cliff and he would swoop down and pick up small Indians and carry them away. But a great chief killed him using a plan that the Great Spirit gave him. They used to paint this thing on the cliffs. After the Indians were driven out, the white people read these legends of the piasol bird and tried to redraw the picture just from the verbal description. And that's what they came up with. They repainted it every year. Finally, they put this huge metal plaque up there. There's me, 1996. They removed the plaque, but I got my picture underneath it before, I don't know, they were worried it'd come down or something. If you go to Alton, Illinois, you can look up piasol in the phone book. It's amazing. There are 25 listings under piasol. You can go to the Crypto Dude at AOL.com. He has lots of information on Thunderbird paintings found in La Crosse, Wisconsin. People say, Brother Hovind, why do you go around teaching about dinosaurs? Well, for one thing, Satan is using them to teach boys and girls a lie, and it's keeping millions from going to heaven. I think this is the battlefield right here, folks. They're a great evangelistic tool, and Christians are confused about them. They don't know how to put them into their perspective. And it causes them to compromise the plain teaching of the Bible. And I think God ought to get the glory for everything He made. That's why I go around teaching about dinosaurs. If He's the chief of the ways of God, well then, God ought to get the glory. When you go to Job chapter 41, there's another whole chapter about another dinosaur called Leviathan. And you can see our videotape on Leviathan, the fire-breathing dragon, if you want more on that, from Job 41 and 42. But after this story was over, Job 40 and 41, Job was a changed man. He was a new man in chapter 42. And I think God did all this with the dinosaurs to change Job's attitude. And you and I need the same thing once in a while. A little attitude adjustment. See, the problem Job had, same problem we have, he didn't understand who God was. You know, we just glibly pray, Our Heavenly Father, do you know who you're talking to? This is the God of the universe. Hey, question. How big is your God? Is your God big enough to tell you what to do and you'll just do it? Does God tell you what kind of clothes to wear? He told the women in 1 Timothy to dress in modest apparel. I mean, do you dress modestly? It's amazing, you know, people go down to the beach down here in Pensacola and wear less than they have on for underwear and don't seem to be embarrassed. Have we gone crazy? Dress modestly. Like my daddy said, if you're not in business, don't advertise. Is God happy with the way you do your hair? 1 Corinthians says it's a shame for a man to have long hair. I read that verse when I was a brand new Christian and thought, wow, I better get mine cut. I was a lifeguard, you know, long, beautiful blonde hair. Oh, I'm cool, you know. Read that verse, said, ooh, I better cut it. So I did. I mean, would you do it if God told you to? Does God tell you what kind of words to use in your speech? He said, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. How big is your God anyway? Every idle word that men speak, they'll give account, therefore, in the day of judgment. Does God tell you what to watch on TV? Psalm 101 says, I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. What if you made a rule around your house? If you heard a curse word on TV, you would shut it off for 2 hours. If you saw somebody immodestly dressed, you're going to shut it off for 2 hours. If you see someone committing adultery or referring to adultery or fornication, you're going to shut it off for 2 hours. How much would you watch? Well, read that verse and explain to me then why we spend all this money. Does God tell you what kind of music to listen to? He said, speak to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. So I guess I travel and speak on dinosaurs because I think God used them to change Job's attitude, and God can use them today to change our attitude. I'm sick and tired of these kids being lied to, telling them dinosaurs lived millions of years ago when they didn't. God created these creatures, and He ought to get the glory for what He did. Last question, and we'll quit. People say, Brother Hovind, did God call you to do this? Travel around and speak on dinosaurs? I don't know. I never got a letter or a phone call. Preacher, I've been saved 33 years. I don't understand what people mean when they say God called me. You just see something that needs to be done and you do it. If I tell my kids, clean your room, I don't want to come back an hour later and find them playing around and the job not done. They're going to say, well, you didn't say make the bed. If I say clean the room, I expect you to figure out the details, right? Kids, you might as well go to sleep. You won't understand anything I'm about to say. Parents, you will understand. Mom says, hey, did you clean your room? Yep, clean, Mom. Let's go check. Mom walks in. Says, okay, son, you see that dirty sock right there? Pick it up. Now bring it over here and put it in the dirty clothes right there. Okay, now come on back. Come on. Now pick up the other one. How many know what I'm talking about? You just got to point out everything. Don't you see what needs to be done? I think God's up in heaven looking down at some of His kids saying, don't you see what needs to be done? Find something to do for the Lord. Start a new Sunday school class for left-handed, one-eyed people or something. I don't know. Do something. He already told us what to do, folks. He said, go into the world and preach the gospel to every creature. When you get done with that, come see me. I'll tell you what's next. He already gave the orders. Just get the job done. Figure out a way to do it. If that means build a big building and bring all the people in, well, great. If that means send money to missionaries, great. I don't think God cares how we do it. I just think He cares that we do it. Win souls. Only 2 great sermons are in the book of Acts. In Acts chapter 2, Peter preached on Mars Hill. Peter preached to the Jews at Pentecost, and he quoted Scripture after Scripture after Scripture in this sermon. The Jews are familiar with Scripture. When you go to Acts 17, Paul stood on Mars Hill. This is the second great sermon in the book of Acts. And Paul's talking to heathen who know nothing of Scripture. And Paul didn't quote any Scripture. A whole sermon, not one Bible verse. He just said, I want to talk to you about the unknown God. He said, God that made the world, He started with creation. I think this shows us when you're dealing with people familiar with the Bible, you can use the Bible. When you're dealing with people that are not familiar with the Bible, you start with creation as a means of evangelism. That's why we call our organization Creation Science Evangelism. We're trying to use the evidence for creation to get people saved. And you could help. Get some of our videos, copy them, give them to your friends. See how many folks you can get to watch them. People will get saved watching a video that you will never get to come to church. Especially men. See, if they're sitting at home holding the remote, this feeling of power surges through their body. How many know what I'm talking about now? It's a very real phenomenon. Okay, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm in control. We've had so many people saved watching videos. It's incredible. Pass out some videos on your campus. Put them in your public school library. We get a call or letter every week from somebody getting saved watching a video they got from the public library or the public school library. Our materials are not copyrighted on purpose. Man, we're trying to win the war, not build the castle. Do something, okay? If we can use my material, if it'll help, use it. Some people say, I don't like your blonde joke. Okay, well then edit out the blonde joke. I don't like your women jokes. Well then edit it out, okay? Eat the meat and spit out the bones. Come on, what's your problem? All right? Get some of our debate tapes. Those are really good to get people saved, or other topical tapes. We have all sorts of information on other series. We just want to win folks to the Lord. You can have a dino night here at your church. Like a vacation Bible school, all wrapped up in a 3-hour program. Get every kid in Pensacola to come and teach them the truth about dinosaurs. Get a truck or a trailer or a tent and travel around and speak on dinosaurs. Hey, you looking for a ministry? This needs to be done desperately. Get yourself a big tent you can set up in somebody's yard and invite all the neighbor kids in and teach them about creation. That's what Chuck Holcomb does full time. Travels and speaks on creation. Sets up his tent and brings kids in. They have hundreds of kids get saved. You can call Chuck up in Alabama, get him to come to your church. He'll do a great job. You can get a bus, like this guy in Australia did. Put creation bus on the side. Filled the inside with fossils and posters all around the walls. He stops in little villages all over and brings everybody on board and teaches about creation. A traveling portable museum. Well, you could do that. Everybody ought to find something to do. Get some puppets or flannel graph or find something. Man, there's a war going on. We need to get busy and use our head for the Lord. What we really need is a Christian Barney. You don't need to be very smart for this job. Get yourself a big dinosaur costume. Purple, of course. Get all the 5-year-olds together. Okay, boys and girls. We're going to sing now. Are you ready? God loves you, God loves me, He wants you in His family. If you'll ask Him now, He'll come into your heart, and of His family you'll be part. Shouldn't they be learning that instead? Folks, there's a war going on, and kids by the thousands in Pensacola, Florida, and in every city around the world are being taught this evolution theory, and they're using dinosaurs to get them started before they can even read. This is where the battle is being fought in the 21st century, right here. Evolution and creation. Everyone should find something to do to get involved. Now, if you're here today and you're not a Christian, first thing you need to do is give your heart to the Lord and get saved. If you are a Christian, you ought to find something to do for the Lord. If you can't think of anything, give me a call. I'll tell you what to do. People say, Brother Hovind, how do you start a ministry on creation? Well, it's real simple. You start a fight, everybody comes to watch. Right? Go to your school board and say, I want the following things out of our textbooks. These things are lies. That'll start a fight. You might not get them out of the book, but you will start a ministry. We'll cover more on lies in the textbooks on the next video. Did you know there are at least 28 lies in every textbook? Probably more than that, but we're going to cover that in the next session on lies in the textbooks. Kids face these things every day. Find something to do for the Lord. There's a war going on. If you're not going to shoot, carry bullets. Do something for the Lord. Let's all stand, bow our heads, and close our eyes, and let's pray. Well, this is Kent Hovind. It is August 31st, 1993. I'm sitting here at the Antique Quest in Winchester, New Hampshire, with Sandy Mancy. It's good to see you again, Sandy. I saw you back in '92. And Sandy is the one that saw Champ. Her picture appears on the cover of the book by Joseph Zarzinski. This took place. Why don't you tell us when it was and where you were and just a little bit about it?
I was in Vermont, on the Vermont side, and my husband, we weren't married at the time, my fiancé and my children, we were exploring the lake. I grew up in that area. And we were just exploring the lake, sitting there, enjoying the peace and quiet. And my husband had gone back to the car to get the camera, and while he was gone, there was a disturbance in the lake, and I looked out, and I thought perhaps it was a school of fish, and maybe a scuba diver or something, and then the head and the neck broke the surface of the water, and the head picked up, and the neck, and the back, and I knew it wasn't a fish.
Right. Well, great. And some people said I heard somebody told you that they thought maybe it was a duck.
It's about a 2,000-pound duck.
2,000-pound duck. When we were at the church, when you came to hear me speak up in wherever that was, New Hampshire, Dublin, New Hampshire, I had all my dinosaurs on the table, and you immediately picked out this one as Champ. But you said it was a little different, what you saw.
Yes, what I saw is the neck was not near as long, and the head is shaped right, like a horse head, but the neck is not near as long.
Okay, now there are 3 or 4 different types of swimming dinosaurs that bones have been found of. There's the chronosaur, which has a huge neck, the plesiosaur, which you're holding, and then there's the elasmosaur. Had a shorter neck, and the head is at a right angle to the body instead of in line with the body. There may be others, of course, undiscovered yet, but get that where they can see it on the camera.
I think this more. But
shorter neck.
With a shorter neck. Or it could be that the neck wasn't all out of the water, too.
Okay. All right, so this was back in 1977. How many other people do you know or have you talked to that claim they have seen it also?
I have spoken with probably about 6 different people who have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of our accounts are very, very similar. So we all can't be crazy, and we all can't be telling something that maybe we didn't see. But they're all very, very similar. The shape of the head, the neck, just the massive size of it.
Okay, now you watched it for about how long, would you say?
Probably from the time the disturbance until it went back down, maybe 8 minutes to 10 minutes.
8 to 10 minutes, okay. And you told me the last time we talked, about a year ago, that when it first came up, it was looking different directions. It was looking around.
When it came up, it was facing this way, okay, to me. And when it came up out of the water, and then it looked around, and when I did take the one snapshot, it was getting fidgety. It was getting a little more movement to it, and it had turned its head to look over its back, and that's when I got the snapshot. And then it turned, and then it went down, and it started going down like this, and then it put its head down under the water. After it was completely under the water, I heard a boat coming. I heard a boat.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even see the boat, but I heard it coming. It knew that boat was coming long before my sense of hearing picked it up.
A lot of people that I've interviewed have told me that, like the ones in Africa, the dinosaurs in Africa, the natives claim they have very sensitive hearing, and they'll hear you coming and duck under the water.
Mm-hmm.
I've got missionary friends over there that say there are dinosaurs in that swamp.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. God created one. He created many.
Sure.
And this is something that has to be a creation. It's not something that could have come from an eel or any of that nonsense. And if God can say one, He create many.
Sure, right.
Now, your picture has, as well as being on the cover of Joseph's book, has been in a number of places. It was in Time magazine, July '81, I think. You were on Unsolved Mysteries. Did you say this last week? Or?
Unsolved Mysteries has shown 3 times. The first was in September of last year, and then
maybe September of '92.
Right.
Okay.
And then recently, about a week or so ago, they had a rerun of it.
Oh, okay. So you're a movie star now.
No.
Well, there are those who teach that evolution is a proven fact, that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. I, as you know, am very different. I was a scientist, science teacher, 15 years. I'm of the strong, studied opinion that a few dinosaurs are even still alive. The world isn't millions of years old. Would you say that what you saw was best described as being a dinosaur of some kind, water-dwelling?
I saw a dinosaur.
You felt like you were seeing a dinosaur, right?
I know. Not felt, I know.
You know, okay.
I saw a dinosaur.
Now, the question comes to some people's mind, why did you only take one picture?
Because I didn't want to miss anything.
Busy watching it.
I was busy watching. I brought the camera up. I took the one photograph, and then I put it down because I didn't want to miss anything. I was in such total awe of what was happening. And I don't even know why I took the one. It was just instinct. My husband handed me the camera.
He had gone after the camera
He had
anyway.
gone after the camera to take pictures of the children.
Okay, before it surfaced.
Right. He didn't even know anything was going on until he got back there.
Sure.
And he helped me up the banking, and he handed me the camera so to help me up the banking. And I had it. My knees gave out. I was shaking. And I went down on my knees. I picked the camera up. I took the one photograph and then put it down. I had a whole film.
You could have taken 20 pictures.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But I wanted to watch it, and I was... and your mind tries to rationalize. And I'm trying to think, well, what is this? And there comes a point when you cannot rationalize. You just stand there and awe.
Yep. Well, great. Anything else, any other typical questions you get asked? Most of the people that interview you are those who believe in evolution.
Yes.
And how do you feel about that? You don't like that? I agree with you 100%. And I appreciate you letting me use your picture. I put it on one of my posters.
Wonderful.
And I have quite a few pictures from different people. And my motive is to strengthen people's faith in the Bible. The Bible is the Word of God. And there's Sandy's picture. You've been featured in a number of shows and magazines and things like that. You've lived here how long in Winchester?
About 20 years.
20 years. So you had no intention of trying to become a celebrity by photographing Jan.
Now, as a matter of fact, I really didn't even want to publish. I kept it a secret for 2 years. And then I made them keep it in the scientific world. And I was forced by the media to publish. Because they were calling, well, if this exists, why haven't we seen it? And
sure, right.
So I was forced to, and that's why I put a copyright on so that I could have some control and some protection as to who's going to use it.
Right. Smart. Good move. Now, people have asked me, they say, hey, if there's so many of these creatures, why don't we get more pictures? And I ask them the question, I'll say, have you ever seen a car wreck? And they say, well, sure. I'll say, give me a picture of one as it happens. You never see a picture of a car wreck as it happens, and yet thousands of car wrecks happen. So it's something that's fleeting, it lasts a few seconds, you don't think of taking a picture until it's too late. Well, maybe if you could keep me posted, send me information if you get any more people, because people probably come to you all the time, don't they? And say, hey, I saw it. Yes. I would like to keep a file of that. Just send me a list.
Absolutely.
A picture of Champ up here on the wall. And tell me about the old gentleman that came and looked at it.
I was standing here at the counter, and an older gentleman came in, and he's staring at the picture, and he's staring, and he asked me what it was, and I told him it was Champ from Lake Champlain. And he went on to tell me that he had never told a soul this, and he was in his 80s. I think he said he was 89 or 87. And he told me about when he was a young man, he went fishing with his grandfather up in Lake Champlain, up by the Bullwaga Bay, that area, up by Tide.
He grew up on the lake?
Yeah, he grew up on the lake.
Okay.
He told me of a time that he and his grandfather were out fishing, and this monstrous big thing, he said, came out of the water. And his grandfather told him that it was Champ, and that he wasn't to tell anybody due to the fact that they would think that they were insane. And so all those years, he never told a soul about it. I was the first person who told, and he said to me, I was not insane. My grandfather was not insane. We saw a living, breathing dinosaur.
Right.
And I was like, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Yes.
More and more testimony.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, other people have seen it, and they come to you and say, hey, you know.
Yes, and I appreciate that because it gives me vindication. You know?
Right.
I'm not crazy. I'm not freaked out. This is what I saw. This is what they saw, and we all saw something. And what? Someday maybe the lake will give up her secret. Who knows? But let's not kill it.
Don't kill it. No. Great. Well, thank you so much. You got customers here. We better let you go.
It's a shark! God darn, it's got white things all coming out of the water. What the heck ever it is. Hey, there's right under. Oh, and the trail went under right there, Dad.
You see those binoculars?
Huh?
You see those binoculars?
It was a shark.
No, it's not a shark. Something just come up there.
I've seen it, Dad.
It's gone.
It went under.
I think we just see Champ.
What's Champ?
Lake Champlain monster. It's gone, Clayton.
I know.
I shouldn't have looked at it with the binoculars so long. I should have got the camera.
Oh, it went under the same way.
It started way the heck out there. In that buoy, just past that buoy when that sailboat went by.
I know.
When I was looking at it with the binoculars, I thought it was just a log. It ran over, but it went right from that buoy all the way inland, went underneath right in there.
This is a giant squid of the species Architeuthis dux. It came ashore on November the 22nd, 1979 at St. Brendan's on Collier's Island in Bonavista Bay, Newfoundland. It's an immature female. It is a small female, but it is a giant squid. I believe the giant squid reach an approximate maximum size of something like 150 feet. If this is 20 feet long, well then it's almost 8 times longer than this in overall length. And that's a big squid.
In 1976, just 30 miles off the Lizard in Cornwall, 2 fishermen, George Vinnican and John Cox, also met a monster.
Well, it went steaming 30 miles off, 25 to 30 miles off. Saw what I thought was an upturned boat on the horizon.
So we went over to investigate. When we got closer, we could see it wasn't an upturned boat. It was something that, well, neither of us had seen before. So it was dark in color and had sort of humps on the back. I should say it was, well, between 15 and 18 feet in length. And rising above the sea about 3 feet. It was a flat, calm day. There was no disturbance on the sea at all.
When we got up closer, went a little closer, I came astern, to our amazement, up out the water about 3 feet from this body, head appeared out the water. And it was a, well, thing I've never seen before after about 40 years at sea. And it gradually sank in the water and disappeared. But after talking about it, the only thing we could explain it was very much like a prehistoric animal.
Good morning and welcome to Obie's Open Line program. I do believe that's what's going on in here this morning. Teresa, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
We're talking about the Ogopogo today. A lot of people in the area have seen it. The legend goes on for many years, and we'll be talking to some experts. I believe we've got Arlene Gall coming in. Arlene wrote a book on it.
That's right.
But we're going to go to the phone lines right now. Line 2, good morning.
Hello there, Mr. Puglish.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
You want to know about Ogopogo?
I certainly do.
Yeah, okay. I had a taxi, and I took a passenger to the hospital, and then I was coming down Abbott Street.
And I got far as about here. I looked to the lake. I was surprised. I seen this thing come out of the water. Well, it's like a horse's head with the kind of horns on it. Well, he was huge, standing up there. Oh my, just like a big serpent. Then another fellow come behind me and he says, "What are you looking at?" He says, "I see no Ogopogo over there." And he says, Where? Over there. He says, I had the door open in the car and stepped out just a little bit and he slipped back in the water, see? And he says, "Gee, look at the big waves there." And all we can see is big waves going down there to Fred's place where he had the boat rental. And they disappeared, see? And then I got all excited. I got in the car and I pulled to the willow end. And I told the people, I says, they were having breakfast, I just seen Ogopogo. And they says, "What the heck you been drinking, eh?"
Line 4, go ahead, please.
Hello, John.
How are you?
I'm not too bad.
Good. Are you going to give me your name?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Tell me about
I saw Ogopogo off of Sarson's about 4 years ago.
Okay, you don't want to give your name on the air.
No, I don't.
You've told some people, obviously.
Yes.
Are you afraid that they might think you're a little bit of a...
Well, I had some strange phone calls. And
I get them every day. That's what they pay me for.
Well, I don't get paid for them, so I don't really want any more, thank you.
We were up on the beach having a picnic, and my daughter was on the swings when I saw this creature underneath the wharf there. And when I turned around and saw it and realized that it was the legendary Ogopogo, I just freaked out. I grabbed the baby and ran down to the beach, and I guess I yelled over and over, "That's him."
She was screaming like anything. She just couldn't believe it. Her face was red. And,
was fishing or whatever it was doing, and it was there for quite some time. Then it straightened out and went along those poles, and as it traveled along, just the 3 humps were showing, and they were from one of those end of those poles to the other in the space the 3 humps were. It traveled along the beach till about the corner over there, and then it turned and went straight across the lake.
All right, we're going to break from the phone calls right now and introduce to you someone that's well known in the Okanagan Valley, Arlene Gall. Arlene has written a book on the Ogopogo. Good morning, Arlene. How are you?
Good morning, John. Morning, Teresa.
Good morning, Arlene.
How many sightings have you documented?
Literally hundreds. Literally hundreds.
When was the first sighting?
The very first sighting was in 1852. The first documented sighting in 1852.
Okay, 1852, and it's now 1980. Do we take it to mean that there must be more than one Ogopogo?
There definitely appear to be more than one.
There has been a film that was made, and I think it was back in 1968. It's pretty hard not to believe when you see it right in front of your eyes. Tell us about that film this morning.
The Folden film was taken in 1968 by a gentleman by the name of Art Folden. He was returning from a trip to his home in Chase. And as he neared Peachland area, he spotted an object out on the lake, and he said to his wife, "Look, there's Ogopogo." And she laughed at him. And he got out and started filming the creature. And what we see in the film is a large animate object moving through the water, surfacing and submerging at various speeds and at various times. And it also shows the creature taking off at very high speed, producing a massive wake. And this is the footage in the film that I like very much, because you see a creature just pushing water, something terrifically, with a massive wake in front, just creating huge wave action. This is believability on my part.
Have there been any recent sightings?
We've had approximately 7 to 8 sightings this year, but we have one that has been the very best sighting.
Why?
It was the Rieger family.
It was a beautiful day. The water was just as calm as glass. And I just took a look across. I could see a big wave coming. And at that time, I just didn't take much notice of it. And it kept coming closer. And I thought to myself, why would there be a wave coming if there's no wind or anything? So I called to my son. I says, come on back here. And I says, take a look and see if you think what the heck's coming down the lake here. So he took a look at it. And he says, gee, I don't know. So we had his grandson. My grandson was along, too. And he said, hey, Grandpa, he says, that's the Ogopogo. It would have ran right into us, but we had to weir the boat off alongside. And then we followed it alongside for about, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And I'd say the monster was possibly 14 to 16 feet long, which was above water, sticking above about 3 feet. And had quite a hump on the front shoulders and had a hump on the back where the tail went. And I'd say the tail was approximately, probably 30, 40, maybe 50 feet because we couldn't see the end of it. But he did have a long tail. He had 4 legs. And I'd say the monster weighed approximately maybe 30 ton.
And his head in the front was moving from side to side. It seemed like he was looking for fish or feeding or something like that, and he was stirring up a tremendous amount of water.
If I would have never seen it, I would have never believed it. And actually, I don't care if anybody believes me or not, but I've seen this animal, and I know it's here. I know it's a tremendous-sized animal.
It was some sort of we call it a monster fish, for lack of a better word, but it was approximately 30 to 35 feet in length, and its head was protruding out of the water, and you could see the flagell action of the tail and the waves going beyond it. And I took 2 pictures of it.
Well, you said it was roughly similar to this. What was different?
Similar to this. I couldn't see these fins on the side because they were. If that is the fish that I saw or whatever, they were not within sight. I mean, I could only see the head and the neck and like the upper part of the body.
This is Kent Hovind from Pensacola, Florida. I'm here in Canada at the 100 Huntley Street program. Several years ago, I think 1994, when I was here on the program, I brought my book from Dr. Roy Mackle on a living dinosaur, and Cal, who's sitting here beside me, Bombay, said, he said, well, I was in Africa and I saw something like that, a dinosaur. And I turned to this page 256 in Roy Mackle's book. And Cal, you said, hey, I saw one of those. Would you take just a few minutes and tell the folks what you saw and, where you work and if they can get a hold of you for any questions, and just describe what you saw.
Well, it was probably one of the most startling experiences I've ever had. It was about in 1963, I think. And I was on my way through the old roads of Kenya back to Nairobi to pick up a car. So I was taking this old Chevrolet that was almost too big for those roads, for the potholes, and I was going rather slow. And it was a hilly country near a place called Muhoroni, and that's down in the Rift Valley, but a hilly part of the Rift Valley. As we came up over the brow of the hill, my wife was with me, and suddenly laying there in front of us, right across the road, 7, 8, 9 feet long, was what I thought at first was a crocodile. And I thought, no, it can't be a crocodile. This is a dry part of the country. And then as I looked at it, we slowed down and stopped the car, actually, and sat there for 10 minutes looking at this. And as I looked at it, I thought, this is, I mean, the actual word prehistoric went through my mind. I said, this can't be real. I've seen pictures like this, but not quite like this one. Anyway, from the tail right through to the back of its head were I don't know what you call them.
Serrations, ridges.
Ridges, like triangulars, perfect triangles, all the way from the tail to the head to the tail. And it was just laying squatted down on the road, seeming to sun. And so I looked at the thing for 10 minutes. I could shoot myself for not having my camera with me that day, but I wish I had. But there it was, and I had never seen anything like it, and nor before nor since. And I've asked people. In fact, I went to the Natural Museum and said, have you ever seen anything or heard of anything in Kenya of this nature? And they said, no, there's nothing like that alive today. I said, I saw something. And I argued with them really rather intently for a while, and they said, well, it must have been a figment of your imagination. Well, my wife and I both saw it, And we asked for several years, we asked anybody if they'd ever seen anything like that. Nobody had, nor have I since. But there it was, laying on the road. After about 10 minutes, it stood up, not quite as high as this drawing, but it just kind of wandered off into a very dry part of the country, bushy a little bit, not much greenery. It was a dry time of the year, and it just took off. And Mary and I just kind of looked at each other in wonder, saying, what in the world is this thing?
What color was it?
It was kind of dusty gray.
Okay. Could you see the eyes?
Yeah. They'd blink. In fact, it turned its head and looked at us. You know, it didn't seem to be afraid of us.
Could you tell from the pupil of the eyeball, was it slotted or round? Or could you see that? Not that close?
I don't think I was close enough to see that.
Was the shape of the snout like a crocodile?
More like a crocodile than a hippo, say.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
It had a long face. Now, some of the African people I asked, they said, oh, that was a monitor lizard. Well, I said, impossible. I've seen many monitor lizards. I've never seen one 9 feet long.
Right.
Never as long as that. And I've actually killed a couple of monitor lizards with my car. And they're smooth-skinned and no ridges in the back. I know a monitor lizard when I see one. This was not a monitor lizard. This had those ridges down its back.
Could you tell if it had smooth skin or scales?
It looked kind of bumpy, more like an alligator.
Right. Okay.
On the sides.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it had scales.
Okay.
I can't really be sure.
All right.
It's been a lot of years ago. This is 1997.
I understand. Well, I've been saying for years there's a few dinosaurs still alive, and your first thought in your mind was something prehistoric, huh?
Well, of course, I have been preconditioned by all the education that I'd had up till that time that these things don't exist.
Whatever it is, it can't be a dinosaur. That's the first thought most people have.
Well, I considered it had to be some kind of a lizard.
Sure.
And because, you have lizards from this size, the little gecko lizards, right up to monitor lizards.
All right, now you work here at 100 Huntley Street, and what's the phone number here? So if they have any questions, they can call and ask for Cal Bombay.
My phone number is area code 905-335-7100, extension 3206.
All right, well, call them up if you don't believe it.
I saw it. I mean, a lot of
some still alive.
When I saw this picture, I thought, that's what I saw. I mean,
all right, let's get them to zoom in on this picture if you can real quick, and we'll close out with that. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to help. Give us a call if you want more information on dinosaurs. You let us know, and we'll be glad to send you our videotape on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. So that's what you saw that day, 1962.
That's as close as anything I've ever seen.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate the time, and God bless you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.